Chapter 732. Of course, Wang Wu nodded heartily and generously. In the face of Shijojin, who was as majestic as the ocean, her posture did not waver at all. The #1 king pill in 9 regions was indeed a well-deserved reputation. The gatekeeper cultivators could not help but sigh that the old saying was too accurate. In the world there were only wrong names but no wrong nicknames. In the face of the anger of a supreme, which king pill in the world could be so calm and collected? Several of the gatekeepers were also the best of the king pill, and they were also cultivators of 4-element sect. However, just looking at the back of Shijojin, they felt that their bladder was a bit swollen. They asked themselves honestly, even if they cultivated for another 10 or 20 years and had a big breakthrough in their stage, it was likely that it would still be difficult for them to face the anger of a supreme. However, Wang Wu seemed to be at ease, and her potential was completely bottomless. Such a person could not be measured by the standard of king pill. She was a monster who looked like a king pill. A monster who dared to speak wildly in front of a supreme. "I'm here to challenge you." At this moment, Shijojin's anger was suppressed by a greater shock. Challenge me? Even though Shijojin had been well informed, he really did not expect to encounter such a strange thing. Wang Wu, the #1 king pill in 9 regions, who had quite a good evaluation in the high-level circle, was possessed by the devil in her cultivation, and the devil chi entered her brain? She actually dared to challenge a supreme who had been famous for many years and was good at actual combat? Could it be that in the past 6 months of the grand competition, the excessive emphasis on the grading system made her forget herself and really think that she was omnipotent? However, even if Wang Wu's self-confidence was too inflated, what reason did she have to challenge him? Thus, Shijojin was silent in the face of the challenge, waiting for Wang Wu's further explanation. If this explanation did not satisfy him, he did not mind using painful and unforgettable means to teach his opponent the insurmountable gap between the form synthesis stage and the king pill stage. There was a momentary calm before the storm. The next moment Wang Wu opened her mouth. She seemed to have expected such a question, so she calmly said, "I am here to protect the moral standard of 9 regions." "What did you say?" Shijojin's eyes widened in disbelief. The majesty of the dark clouds covering the sky gradually dissipated due to excessive shock. Wang Wu, the woman who was known as the holder of the lower limit in 9 regions, actually claimed that she came to protect the moral standard? For you, the best way to protect the morality of 9 regions is to pull out your sword and commit suicide. But after saying these absurd words, Wang Wu became even more serious. "I'm not joking. Although the world has many misunderstandings about me, deep in my heart, I am a person who cares about the world. I am known as the #1 king pill in 9 regions, so naturally, I have to do something for this land that I love deeply." Shijojin endured the churning of his stomach and said, "Well, even if you care about the world, why did you come to my 4-element sect and talk nonsense?" Wang Wu said, "I am here to challenge you. As we all know, Supreme is the most famous reproduction expert in 9 regions." "Humph." Shijojin nodded with a slightly smug look. His anger at being challenged by Wang Wu's rude challenge had slightly subsided. He was not a straightforward person who was easy to be coaxed, but anyone would always be happy when they were praised in their most proud and good field. Moreover, except for Wang Wu, few people would so bluntly praise him as a reproduction expert. This title simply made Shijojin overjoyed. However, the next moment the joy disappeared. "And also the biggest asterisk in 9 regions. You're the asterisk. Shijojin was so angry that if he didn't have the supreme-level immortal heart to suppress his impulse, he would have immediately attacked Wang Wu. "Since you know that I am the most professional reproduction expert in 9 regions, you should naturally understand that I hate those mating behaviors that have nothing to do with reproduction. For example, those short-sighted people in yin and yang school who only know how to enjoy and use the joy of sex, but refuse to think about the next generation of 9 regions when yin and yang are in harmony. I have always despised them. What I am engaged in is a great cause. That's just your self-righteousness and narcissism," Wang Wu unceremoniously said. "In fact, the way of reproduction that you advocate will only become a breeding ground for ****. Cultivators who live in the present will not consider the future thousands of years later. For them, the way of reproduction will only be an excuse to enjoy the joy of sex. Promoting reproduction is to promote ******. When you righteously advocate reproduction, have you ever thought that if your children lose their chastity at a young age and sink into the joy of sex? Shijirjin angrily said, I have children, and each of them is an upright person. None of them have fallen into depravity. Wang Wu's face did not change. But there are thousands of parents in 9 regions who, because of the way of reproduction that you advocate, have to painfully watch their children fall into depravity in *****. For this, you, the reproduction expert, are duty-bound to do so. Whether it's your subjective will or not, you are the biggest ***** in 9 regions. Shijirjin was so angry by this rogue logic that he could hardly speak. However, Wang Wu pursued the victory, and I, the moral guardian of 9 regions, the promoter of the concept of chastity, the great anti-sex fighter, want to establish a correct outlook on life for the cultivators of 9 regions by defeating you. Let them know that the so-called evil way of reproduction is absolutely not feasible. Anyone who dares to do ***** in 9 regions will be firmly spurned. Before she could finish, she was interrupted by Shijirjin's roar. Wang Wu, go to hell! The next moment, the supreme level battle was about to officially begin in the City of Immortals. However, Wang Wu was still calm and collected. Wait a minute. As she said that, she pulled out the emerald green bamboo sword from her waist and pointed it in front of her. Suddenly, the space within a radius of several dozens of meters appeared unnatural contraction and expansion, which made several cultivators of 4-element school feel very uncomfortable. Shijirjin showed a slightly surprised look. Just now, he made a move in anger. Although it was not his full strength, so it was not a killing move. In theory, it could definitely injure Wang Wu. Shijirjin had a very good estimate of Wang Wu's strength, so he did not treat her like a king pill. Just now, the invisible 4-phase break was the treatment of a deity stage cultivator. However, although Wang Wu reluctantly received it, in the end she still received it. What else do you want to say? Wang Wu shook her sore wrist and said, if we do it here, it will only benefit Dixian. Let's go to the arena. Okay. Shijirjin gritted his teeth and temporarily held back his anger. In the City of Immortals there was no shortage of arenas. Outside the central arena in Immortal 1 area, there were countless arenas of various sizes. And there was no lack of large venues that could accommodate the supreme level battle. Wang Wu and Shijirjin left the station. Halfway there, Shijirjin suddenly asked, what exactly do you want from me this time? Although at first, he was really angered by Wang Wu that his primordial spirit trembled, Shijirjin didn't need to think about it to understand that Wang Wu would never come to provoke him for no reason. Especially after that sentence, she deliberately led him to the arena. There must be a reason behind this series of strange behavior. Supreme's eyes are like a torch, so I will say it directly. Sure enough, Wang Wu restrained her gentlemanly demeanor and became more familiar. There's a big problem with that successor disciple of yours. When Shijirjin heard this, countless scenes flashed in his mind, and then he understood why Wang Wu inexplicably provoked and angered him. Because shortly before Wang Wu came, Luo Xiao suddenly found him and said that he had something to discuss with him. Of course, Shijirjin attached great importance to his own successor disciple, but he couldn't turn a blind eye to Wang Wu's provocation outside the door. So he could only send Luo Xiao away and deal with the trouble of Wang Wu first. Now it seemed that this was Wang Wu's intention. What's the problem with Luo Xiao? Wang Wu was silent for a while. What I'm going to say next will be unimaginable. With our friendship, I don't expect Supreme to believe me, but you should at least listen to it once. Shijirjin said, just based on the sword you used to block my 4 phases break, I can listen to your story no matter how ridiculous it is. Okay then. Wang Wu frowned and began to think about how to phrase her words. Being a lobbyist was really not her specialty, especially when the person she was trying to persuade was a rather eccentric reproduction expert. Especially when she didn't have any words prepared. In fact, she was forced to fight just now. Wang Wu didn't expect Luo Xiao's action to be so fast. It was reasonable to say that after killing Shan Yinzi, he should at least spend some time to deal with the follow-up work. And he also had to consider whether there was a possibility of his plan being leaked. As a result, he actually came directly to Shijirjin. If it weren't for Wang Wu's timely interruption, he would have succeeded. At that time, Wang Wu and Luo Xiao had already noticed each other's existence. Wang Wu and Shizhou didn't have any friendship, so it was easy for her to be rejected. Luo Xiao would definitely think of an excuse to hold Shizhou back and not let the two meet. Therefore, Wang Wu had to take an unconventional approach. As an anti-sex fighter, she forced Shizhou to come out. The only problem was that her actions just now seemed to be a bit too obvious. It was inevitable that it would alert the enemy. Would Luo Xiao realize that he had been exposed? Would he further think about the secret of Xianxi? However, she really couldn't care so much. At this time, Wang Wu suddenly became a little lost in thought, because she thought that if Wang Lu was here, there might be a way to make the best of both worlds. Not only could it prevent Luo Xiao from attacking Shizhou, but it could also arrange all of this so that Luo Xiao couldn't say any flaws and doubts. Wang Lu had too many tricks up his sleeves. So bitch, when it's time for you to show up, where the hell are you slacking off? Chapter 733. Hiss roar. Accompanied by a long and desolate dragon roar. A flash of light exploded in the middle of the vortex of stars. A slender dragon that stretched for hundreds of miles was severed in the middle. The sea of blood was like a river of stars, but in a moment, the two halves of the corpse were wrapped in the sea of stars and quickly melted in the starlight. At the same time, the world inside the body of the dragon, as well as the millions of creatures in that world, also disappeared. Another Gisaurus died tragically, and the culprit was completely indifferent to the annihilation of millions of creatures. A pair of cold eyes kept looking for new targets in the vortex of stars, filled with murderous intent. This scene that was even colder than the abyss was soon interrupted by a slightly tired young voice, and it came to an abrupt end. I say, respected Senior Tetragon, have your hormones been a little out of whack recently? In the vortex of stars, the cold eyes that set off countless bloody storms turned indifferently. The power of an imperial emperor was enough to make the stars tremble, but the person who spoke seemed calm and composed in the face of all this. However, he was somewhat frowning. Previously, you said that the real traitor must be hiding in the vortex of stars. I asked why, and you said that your intuition told you the answer. Okay, I believe you. You said that if you want to catch that person as soon as possible, you have to keep releasing pressure and force him to reveal himself, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Then, you said that you want me to watch the whole process, and that I would rather accompany you to slack than work overtime, so I also agreed. But, this is the absurd play that you want me to watch? The daily life of the dragon-slaying hero Tetragon? Wang Lu curled his lips. So far, I have accompanied you to watch the dragon-slaying drama for 3 days. And the number of Gisaurus that have died in your hands is almost in the double digits. You have indeed shown your invincible power very well, but what is the meaning of this kind of killing? To vent your anger? To vent your anger? Or do you think that the traitor might be hiding inside those Gisaurus? Moreover, the foundation of the existence of the tombs of immortals is these Gisaurus. If you kill all the Gisaurus, the structure of the tombs of immortals will be finished, and the inheritance that you guys have worked so hard to leave in those years will also be ruined. Or, are you going to use this kind of heroic way to make me fall in love with you so that we can get married? I'm sorry, I'm not really into this kind of thing, and I don't think you'll be so bold and unrestrained. In that case, after thinking about it, I could only ask the question I just asked. Senior Tetragon, are you suffering from hormonal imbalance? Looking at Tetragon's cold eyes, Wang Lu said, don't worry, I won't laugh at you. On the path of immortal cultivation, the higher the realm, the more likely it is for a cultivator to suffer from some quirks. For example, I know that there is an old man named Shizhou, who devoted his whole life to promoting the way of reproduction, which caused him to fall from a person of high character to a peerless aberration. Therefore, if you tell me now that your hobby is to kill Gisaurus, I will really believe it. Senior Tetragon, are you the kind of person who is suffering from hormonal imbalance? To Wang Lu's sincere question, Tetragon's response was to turn his head and lock his eyes on a leisurely floating Gisaurus on the other side of the infinitely distant river of stars. The next moment, Tetragon disappeared from his original place. In the blink of an eye, he appeared thousands of miles away. His slender jade-like hand turned into a sharp invisible blade and cut off the head of the Gisaurus. A Gisaurus which was born with magical ability and whose power was comparable to that of an immortal beast, was killed by Tetragon in one move. Wang Lu, who watched all of this from the side, gently sighed. A person with hormonal imbalance probably can't make such a decisive slash. Before he could finish his words, Wang Lu felt that Tetragon's gaze changed slightly. Because the mystery of that slash just now was not so easy to see. At least for most of the cultivators in 9 regions, they could only sigh with emotion at the invincible power of Tetragon, but they did not understand that the slash she raised was the sharp blade of the immortal heart. On the one hand, it proved that her mentality was still rational and calm. On the other hand, it was also a test for Wang Lu to see if he could understand her intention. Of course, Wang Lu could see it clearly. Although there was a world of difference in strength between them, his eyesight was absolutely not bad. 150 years ago, he once fought against a genuine fallen immortal head-on. He had seen a lot about the means of immortals. However, these were all details. After this slash, Wang Lu was finally able to confirm his conjecture. He shook his head and said, "If your current killing is not because of the hormonal imbalance, then the only explanation I can think of is this. These Gisaurus have a reason to die. But they are clearly the basis of the group of immortal tombs that you have painstakingly found and cultivated. If you need to kill them, you should have killed them a long time ago. So, the change should be after your resuscitation, right? No, it should be not long ago, because with your temperament, I'm afraid you won't have any patience in this matter. As for the content of the change, I guess it's because you have been poisoned by some irreparable and extremely destructive poison?" A trace of surprise appeared on Tetragon's face, but she quickly restrained it. She had expected that Wang Lu was very keen, but she did not expect that his keenness could reach this point. For 3 days she did not explain what she was doing at all, but Wang Lu could actually infer all this almost out of thin air. She examined Wang Lu with unprecedented concentration. It was not a strong aggressiveness, but it could penetrate all external defenses. After a long time, Tetragon was somewhat satisfied, but also somewhat helplessly opened his mouth to reveal the truth. Yes, these Gisaurus have been contaminated. The fallen immortals can instigate them at any time with a password, and then take the treasures buried in their bodies as their own. Of course, with the vision of the fallen immortals, they may not be interested in the heritage we left behind, but at least we will never have the chance to get it again. Wang Lu shrugged and said, "But you cut off these Gisaurus so quickly, but it seems that you didn't have time to take anything out of them? You didn't even have time to deal with the hundreds of millions of creatures in the Gisaurus. It's better than more Gisaurus being contaminated," Senior Gem Emperor explained. "This poison, 16,000 years ago we had a deep understanding of it. It's highly contagious, irreversible, corrosive, and absolutely lethal when it breaks out. The only way to deal with it is to eliminate all the infected people the moment it's discovered. This is a mercy to everyone." When he heard this, Wang Lu was shocked and could not help but be silent for a long time. Was there really such a terrible poison in this world? Even Gisaurus, a magical creature that could contain a world, could not resist it? However, from another point of view, the person who made and administered the poison was a high and mighty immortal, and his means were indeed not something that the cultivators of 9 regions could understand. "So, is your main body staying here to deal with this strange poison?" Tetragon said. "I would not rest assured if anyone else did this except me. Moreover, no matter how contagious this poison is, there must be a source for it to spread. I think I'm close to grasping the root of it." Wang Lu smiled and said, "Is there a need to gradually catch that? Right now, there are only a few exiles left in the whirlpool of stars, and they can be easily excluded by the method of elimination. Senior, when you made a prompt decision to expel Bai Zhe and the others, did you ever think that you would encounter such trouble?" Tetragon admitted his mistake very frankly. "This is indeed an unexpected trouble. But at that time I had no better choice. And now, your main body is equivalent to being contained here. Is there only one avatar of yours in the City of Immortals? TSK, it seems that if there is no accident, it would be a waste of this layout." When Wang Lu said this, he subconsciously lifted his foot, but soon took it back. "No, since this is a layout, it should not be that easy for me to go back. So, Senior, is this the reason why you coaxed and pestered me to stay?" Tetragon said, "Here my main body can take care of you. In the City of Immortals, there are your companions and my avatar, but only between these two, no one can help you. Strictly speaking, the space between the whirlpool of stars, and the city of immortals was also the territory that had been developed by the Wanxian League. However, in this case no one could guarantee that it was safe. Wang Lu was silent for a while and said, "Can you fully grasp the situation in the city of immortals through the connection between your main body and avatar?" "Of course." Tetragon said, "If you are interested in the situation over there, I can tell you that the fallen immortals in the city of immortals have begun to act. I can clearly smell their stench, but..." Wang Lu sighed and said, "But you still can't accurately locate them? I'm starting to suspect that your sense of smell might have been taken advantage of by others." Chapter 734. That's the story I brought to you. Somewhere in the arena in the city of immortals, Wang Wu racked her brains and finally finished the story of Yin Xian and Luo Xiao without revealing too many secrets. After hearing the story, Shi Jin looked thoughtful and was not in a hurry to respond. Wang Wu's story was indeed a good story. Although many key points were obviously erased, it was still a very convincing story on the whole. However, should he trust her? A woman who had little interaction with him and had no friendship with him at all? However, on the other hand, although he had no friendship with the people of Lingjian School, and the communication between the Four Element sect and Lingjian School was also very few. However, there was also no hatred between them. So, what was the reason for her to come all the way to tell him such a ridiculous story? What benefit could she get? On the other hand, if the story was true but he was negligent, the price would be too great. Good story. After a long silence, Shi Jin made a decision. But it's not a story that can convince everyone. Wang Wu said with a cynical look, "I don't have high expectations for the average IQ of the cultivators of 9 regions." "Very good." Shi Jin nodded and said again, "Very good. I will deal with this matter myself." Wang Wu smiled and said, "Then I will wait for the good news." The next moment, Shi Jin disappeared from his place. His back looked slightly desolate. However, Wang Wu gradually restrained her smile, or rather, her smile became a bit mean. She raised her hand, used her finger as a pen, and wrote out of thin air. A moment later, an invisible letter was written. The content was very simple. It was to ask the elders of Lingjian School, Lu Li and Zhou Ming, who were in the city of immortals, to keep an eye on Shi Jin and wait for him. She didn't believe that Shi Jin could deal with Luo Xiao alone, because Luo Xiao was not alone at all, and Shi Jin might not be so cruel to this successor disciple, whom he was once quite optimistic about. Considering Shi Jin's IQ, letting him deal with it alone was simply letting him die. After the letter was written, Wang Wu pinched her fingers and released the invisible letter. This kind of secret letter, stimulated by her true yuan, was even faster than the ordinary flying sword. In the arena, she watched the letter go away and gradually showed a look of relief. After a while, she was already whistling and throwing a self-made die in her hand. It was also six-sided, but the words on it were eat, drink, whore, gamble, smoke all at once, and judging from the smooth surface of the die, it seemed that it was used frequently. As expected, the result of the dice was all. Wang Wu chuckled twice and then leisurely left the arena. However, the moment she stepped out of the arena, her expression suddenly became fierce. Her usual laziness was swept away, and her eyes were as sharp as 2 swords. Damn it! I knew there would be blind idiots who would intercept my letter. This letter was Wang Wu's real bait. Although she was not sure that she and Shi Jin would be targeted, it was never wrong to be a little more careful. After all, she was not the little girl who had to rely on her senior brother 150 years ago. Now that Wang Lu was not there, and Feng Yin and the others were still on Spirit Sword Mountain, she had to act in the city of immortals. In fact, she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. It only took Wang Wu a moment to come to the place where the letter was intercepted. Immortal 3 area. A long and narrow corridor. It was a closed corridor connecting Immortal 3 area and Immortal 5 area. There were not many pedestrians coming and going, and it was also a set of channels deliberately chosen by Wang Wu, because it was the most inconspicuous to make a move here, and she could quickly escape to other places from the relatively accessible Immortal 5 area. The only problem was that, since Wang Wu had already calculated this, she would appear here at an unexpected speed and block the person who intercepted the letter. Of course, considering that the opponent was a fallen immortal, It was also very likely that the person who intercepted the letter could not be blocked. However, that could also explain the problem. The fallen immortals in the City of Immortals already had an expert that Wang Wu could not stop. Luo Xiao was probably just a camouflage, a puppet pushed in front of the stage to attract attention. However, when Wang Wu finally arrived at the scene, she could not help but show a wry smile. Damn it, it's really watertight. The person who intercepted the letter was indeed blocked by her. 3 little bastards in miscellaneous cultivator robes, whose cultivation base was between Foundation Establishment and Shudan stage. At this time they were happily using a fine net to wrap Wang Wu's invisible letter. They talked with each other about how to distribute the next windfall. With just one glance, Wang Wu guessed the other party's means. She didn't appear, but hired a few temporary workers to carry the blame. This move was really slippery. What could she do now? Catch these 3 small fries and then try to find the melon by following the vines? It would be strange if she could find the melon. Wang Wu didn't even need to think with her knees to know where these 3 little bastards came from. It must be an unidentified mysterious person who gave them a small sum of money and gave them a set of capture net so that they could quickly rush to the corresponding position to intercept them. And that mysterious person was most likely instructed by someone. Right now they could only find a corpse at most, and all the relevant clues had been destroyed. Therefore, Wang Wu had no interest in these 3 small fries. She pondered for a moment in front of the long and narrow corridor, quickly adjusted her goal, and then her figure flashed away. She decided to find Shijojin. According to normal circumstances, she should have just caught the 3 small fries. Although they were small fries, and although most of the clues were doomed to be destroyed, this was not the mortal world, but the City of Immortal cultivation world. If he searched carefully, he would definitely be able to find some clues. Even if it was a skeleton that had been destroyed, he could use the soul tracking technique, the great divination technique, and other techniques to reverse the karma and trace it back to the past. And in the current situation, she should not let go of even the slightest clue. However, on the other hand, Wang Wu thought if she really did that, what would it mean? It meant that no one would care about Shijojin at all. The other party should be waiting for such an opportunity. And judging from the impression that she had always left, perhaps she did not have the IQ to properly deal with the situation. The famous number 1 king pill in 9 regions had never been known for her superb wisdom. About Wang Wu, people only knew 2 things. First, she was really strong. Second, she had no moral integrity at all. Perhaps only the people in Lingjian school, those who had fought with Wang Wu for more than 100 years, could deeply understand that when needed, Wang Wu could be much more shrewd than most people. This point could be proved by the white hair and wrinkles on disciplinary elder Fang He's head. When Wang Wu appeared in front of the 4-element sect again as expected, she was greeted with a closed door. The gatekeepers at the door were replaced by 2 tall and mighty men, who exuded the aura of Yuanying stage, sending a Taoist master of Yuanying stage to guard the door. Perhaps even Shangjing sect could not do such an extravagant move. This was, of course, not the norm for the 4-element sect. In other words, something extraordinary had happened inside the station. Wang Wu did not hesitate to break the door. And the 2 gatekeepers also did not hesitate to block her way. Of course, they would not be arrogant enough to think that they could suppress the king pill in front of them because they were in Yuanying stage. However, Wang Wu was notoriously strong in defense but weak in attack. As the elites of the 4-element sect, they could not even block her. Then they were sent flying. The 2 Taoist masters of Yuanying stage were like straw floating in the sky. Until their primordial spirit surged and they lost consciousness, they could not believe that they, who were good at strength and defense, and were connected to the station's great array, would actually be sent flying by the opponent. They had long known that Wang Wu was strong, but no one had ever heard that she was this strong. At the same time, Wang Wu unceremoniously slammed into the gate of the encampment. The heavy gate carved from gold and jade collapsed under the impact of the tremendous force, and the entire encampment's large array groaned as it twisted and cracked. Wang Wu turned a deaf ear to it and strode forward. Her face showed a bit of anxiety. In front of her, in the hall belonging to Shijojin, it seemed that something big had happened, because her perception tentacles could not penetrate it at all, as if the internal situation had been deliberately blocked by someone. Of course, it was natural for Shijojin's residence to be kept confidential, but it was too exaggerated to keep it secret to this extent. Wang Wu speculated based on the information fed back by her primordial spirit. In the hall, there was at least one supreme-level master who was trying his best to block the outside world's detection. Shi Jin had no reason to do this kind of thing. For him, the rational choice was to disclose his handling process to show his innocence, so as not to be implicated by Luo Xiao. And the fact that the door was locked was too abnormal. The situation was urgent. Wang Wu could not care too much. She took 2 steps forward, drew the power of the earth under her feet, and forcibly broke the last door in front of her in an unprecedented domineering manner. Then, she stopped and looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. In the hall, dozens of female cultivators were rolling naked with Shi Jin. Their white and soft bodies were dazzling. Oh great, Supreme is so great. So hot, so hard, Supreme, give it to me, I also want it. Listening to the constant obscenities in her ears, Wang Wu felt that her brain had completely stopped working. While Wang Wu was shocked, Shi Jin was also a bit surprised. He straightened up from his pink buttocks and asked with a frown, Taoist Master Nanfei, what are you doing here? Wang Wu swallowed her saliva, adjusted her mood, and then flew into a rage. I want to ask you, what are you doing? Shi Jin snorted coldly, you can't even see this? Of course I'm reproducing. Fan, are you sick? Do you still want to reproduce at this time? And with dozens of people? Shi Jin said, it's at this time that I have to seize the opportunity to reproduce. Otherwise, when I'm in a desperate situation, wouldn't it be a pity if I can't leave enough descendants? I'm now the first target of the fallen immortals. I'm in danger, so I have to seize all the time to reproduce. Well, if there's nothing else, you can go out now. Wang Wu really wanted to stab this damn reproduction maniac to death with her sword. Where's Luo Xiao? Shi Jin was quite impatient. Of course I can't find him. Otherwise, why do you think I'm in such a hurry to reproduce? It's because things are out of control. As he said that, he had already picked up a female cultivator who was in a daze, separated her legs, and then straightened up and quickly plowed. Unlike the female cultivator who had climaxes one after another, Shi Jin's expression looked extremely solemn and serious. It couldn't be seen that he was flirting with clouds and rain at all. It was more like a terminally ill patient drafting his will stroke by stroke. You really treat this as a career. Wang Wu covered her chest with her hand. For the first time, she felt annoyed to the point that she wanted to vomit blood. Since you're reproducing openly, why did you close the door and window so tightly just now? Shi Jin angrily said. I'm not like those Yin and Yang school bastards. How could you do this kind of thing in front of others? If you have nothing else to do, then get the hell out of here. Close the door when you get the hell out of here. Wang Wu was silent for a long time. Then she put up her middle finger at Shi Jin and left in a huff. Chapter 735. On the way home, Wang Wu constantly reflected on what went wrong with her series of actions. Until the last step, she didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. Although many of the judgments of actions were completely subjective guesses, there was no better way than subjective guesses in the environment at that time. As for Shi Jin's godlike performance, it was estimated that even the fallen immortals could not predict it, so it was normal for her not to expect it. But the old guy is really worthy to be a master of reproduction. It's only been a short time, right? How could he summon 40 or 50 female cultivators with the best figure, appearance and aptitude to sleep together in his house? How the hell did he do that? Wang Wu clenched her fists with jealousy and hatred. It's very simple. That's because I started all this hundreds of years ago. I have contacted hundreds of female cultivators in the union of 10,000 immortals, all of whom are in good shape and appearance, excellent props for reproduction. I made an agreement with them that when I encounter an emergency and need to carry out the final reproduction of my life, I can immediately summon them to my side. In exchange, they will inherit a considerable part of my inheritance. Of course, there are also people who sincerely recognize my idea and are eager to have my children. Shi Jin's voice appeared almost silently behind Wang Wu. However, Wang Wu was not too surprised by this. Instead, she showed a smile, turned around and asked, You are indeed worthy to be a supreme cultivator with actual combat background. You always remain cautious at all times. I thought you have devoted yourself to the way of reproduction, but it seems that Supreme still left a doppelganger outside. Shijirjin was a bit puzzled and said, "What doppelganger? Wait a minute, this is not a doppelganger but the real one? Then the one in your house is the doppelganger? No way will you use a doppelganger to do this kind of thing?" Shijirjin was even more puzzled and said, "When did I make a doppelganger? I've always been alone." Wang Wu was silent for a while, and then asked with even more incredulous eyes, "From the time we just met until now, it's been at most half an incense stick of time. Even before that it's only been. Don't tell me that you've already, with those dozens of women." Shijirjin raised his head proudly. "That's right, I'm done." Wang Wu didn't know what to say anymore. If it was any other cultivator with the king pill, they would have to worry about their safety. After learning such a sensitive secret, there was the possibility of being silenced at any time. Of course, as the #1 king pill in 9 regions, she didn't really care about Shijirjin. However, after knowing this secret, Wang Wu still felt as if she had eaten a meal at Ethereal Peak's cafeteria. Shijirjin was an experienced cultivator after all. One glance was all it took for him to know what was on Wang Wu's mind. He shook his head and revealed a generous and gentle smile like that of an elder. "Taoist Master Nonphase, it seems that you haven't correctly understood the way of reproduction." Wang Wu thought to herself, "I don't want to understand." However, at this time Shijirjin was obviously in a good mood. Reproduction is not the pleasure of fish and water. This is a difficult and righteous mission, which doesn't need to be tempered by boring pleasure and vanity. Especially when my reproduction is on the verge of death, I should cherish my time even more. If I can complete all the procedures in one breath of time, I will never waste more time. Wang Wu wanted to applaud this divine argument. To be able to say that the time was not enough. He was indeed worthy of being an actual combat veteran. However, then she thought of a serious problem. "Are you saying that you don't have much time left?" Shijirjin nodded his head seriously. "I'm afraid that's the case." Next, Shijirjin began to give a concise explanation. "When I returned to the station, I didn't see Luo Xiao, but he left a letter." Wang Wu immediately asked, "You didn't destroy the letter immediately?" Shijirjin was silent for a moment and then shook his head. "Supreme, in any case, you are also a person who does great things. How can you be indecisive at such a time?" The suspicion on Luo Xiao was so heavy. What good thing could he leave behind? Of course, it might also be a threatening letter that said, "Your daughter is in my hands." However, rationally speaking, the best way to deal with this kind of threatening letter was to destroy it on the spot. Never negotiate with a madman. It was better to have one's wife and children die than to have one's wife and children die together. Shijirjin was also a veteran. How could he not understand this truth? It was nothing more than that he couldn't bear it. He promoted Luo Xiao from Huayan School. Perhaps it was because of Luo Xiao's talent, but after getting along for a period of time, there would always be some feelings. Shijirjin's successor disciple was to inherit his mantle, and was more likely to take charge of the 4-element sect in the future. In fact, this was much more important than his own children. Shijirjin had such high hopes for Luo Xiao. How could he not have feelings for him? And after learning that he had betrayed the fallen immortal, how could his heart not be hurt? Under the pain, it was understandable that he was confused for a while, but the price was too big. Sure enough, Shijirjin then said, "In that letter, Luo Xiao explained to me in detail the reason for his betrayal, what kind of stage the god of war blood needs, what kind of opponent, and why he made that choice. Finally, he said to me that he was sorry, but he never regretted it." With that, Shijirjin raised his hand and said, after reading the letter spontaneously ignited and turned into a cloud of smoke. I didn't think too much about it, but that cloud of smoke stayed in the room a little longer. There has always been a cleaning array in my hall, so the filth will not stay for long, so. Shijirjin paused and then said, "I think I'm poisoned." "Late-stage syphilis?" Wang Wu asked helplessly. Shijirjin was silent for a long time. For him, who should strive for every minute of time, it was obviously because he had received a great shock. "I don't know what kind of poison it is, and I can't even be completely sure whether I'm poisoned or not, but I think that cloud of smoke should not be something useless that he left behind. Wang Wu thought for a moment, then took a deep breath and rearranged everything in her mind again. She was convinced that her previous speculation was not wrong. The fallen immortal did take advantage of the time when she and Shijojin were separated, and the method was very exquisite. They left a highly poisonous letter and took advantage of Shijojin's absent-minded state to make him fall into the trap. This design couldn't be considered inconceivable, but now that he thought about it, the person who designed this trap seemed to have predicted everyone's reaction. This was the truly terrifying part. What was even more terrible was Shijojin's subsequent response. You, in a situation where you knew you were poisoned, you still copulated with dozens, no, possibly hundreds of female cultivators. What kind of offspring do you want to leave behind? Shijojin explained with some dissatisfaction. Of course, I've done a good job with safety measures. Reproduction with enough safety measures? Sounds really awkward. Shijojin sighed and said, I'm a great master of reproduction. Don't you think that when my life is about to end, I'm likely to be in an incomplete state and can't leave a healthy seed? So I also began to prepare for it a long time ago. When I was sure to do the last step, there would be a brief last radiance of the setting sun. You should have felt it at that time, right? Wang Wu thought for a moment. When she first saw for Prime Minister, she really felt that this guy was a dragon and a tiger. She thought that he was going berserk, but unexpectedly, it turned out to be the last radiance of the setting sun. Still immersed in reproduction at the last moment of your life, Supreme, you died a worthy death. But the clue of Luo Xiao is gone just like that? After all, he is your successor. Didn't you leave any useful mark on him? Shijojin said. No, I've always trusted him. Wang Wu really had nothing to say. How could this Supreme, who enjoyed considerable prestige in the Wanxian League, make such a low-level and stupid mistake? Trust? Are you familiar with Luo Xiao? Taoist non-phase. Although I don't have long to live, I'm very grateful that you're willing to help me. So, Wang Wu's eyes lit up slightly. Are you going to share your inheritance with me? Shijojin froze for a moment and then said, I want to say that I just carefully reviewed everything since I met Luo Xiao. I think I've caught the clue of the person who tempted him to betray me. Really? Shijojin said. Luo Xiao's betrayal must have been guided by someone. No matter what changes there are in his mind, it's impossible for him to get in touch with the fallen immortals by himself. Someone must have observed all this in secret, and then took the initiative to guide Luo Xiao to betray me. Moreover, it happened in the past few months. Because of the previous Luo Xiao, I can be sure that even if he had many problems, at least he would not make such a big mistake. And when I recalled Luo Xiao's movements in the past few months, the only suspicious point was that he had been in contact with a strange person. Strange person? Shijojin said. He said that he was a friend of Huayan School, and that person did exude the aura of Huayan School's method, but I don't remember that there was such a person in Huayan School. Wang Wu froze for a moment and then realized that since Shijojin dug out Luo Xiao from Huayan School, he must have investigated the environment in which he grew up before. With the ability of a Supreme, perhaps he could see through Huayan School at a glance. At that time I thought it was a new disciple of Huayan School, so I didn't think too much about it. But now that I look back, that person clearly has a strange smell. Shijojin said and stretched out his hand. I can't find that person accurately, but I still remember that strange aura. I'll copy that aura to you, and you can follow it to find him. Wang Wu thought for a moment. Although he didn't give the final result, it was good to have a direct clue. So she stepped forward to accept Shijojin's gift. However, just as she took a step forward, a great warning sign suddenly came from her heart. The next moment, Shijojin's face suddenly became blurred, and a black cloak covered Wang Wu's head. In an instant, it covered the sky and shrouded her. Chapter 736. Non-phase method has long been famous in 9 regions. It was an impregnable fortress, an impregnable iron wall. No matter how gorgeous the language was, it was not an exaggeration to describe the defensive ability of non-phase method. Although the user was only a king pill level cultivator so far, there had never been a case of non-phase method being directly penetrated. Many people attributed this to Wang Wu being smart enough to never provoke an opponent that she could not afford to provoke. However, in fact, it was not the first time for her to provoke an enemy that was beyond her level. Being able to survive until now could not be explained simply by luck or shrewdness. At least, smart people would not doubt how hard her non-phase sword defense was. Similarly, smart people would never try to attack head-on. Even if it was a supreme-level cultivator or a higher-level cultivator, if they wanted to deal with Wang Wu, they would have to use some tricks. There was no invincible method in the world. Non-phase method's defensive power was almost absolute, which was based on the sacrifice of almost all other attributes. Therefore, in the face of the incoming dark cloak, Wang Wu instantly realized the other party's means. The dark cloak undoubtedly belonged to a certain Dixian who was famous for his black color. This was not the first time that Wang Wu saw this black cloak. Before that, he had used this cloak several times in the grand competition. The cloak was not a lethal tool, but it could form a closed cage, which could shrink and expand freely and was very strong. Once it was closed by the cloak, it could not be broken through by non-phase method alone. Wang Wu did not have her disciple's ability to attack and defend at the same time. Only her defensive ability was unparalleled in the world. Once she was sealed, non-phase method could only protect her from death. However, the complete loss of freedom and the loss of contact with the outside world. This was a typical life worse than death. The dignified Dixian doesn't even have the courage to face me head-on. Instead, he has to go through a lot of trouble to set up this kind of despicable trap. This painstaking effort is worthy of praise. Unfortunately, you think too simply of me. Do you think I don't know my own weakness? Wang Wu took a deep breath, and the king pill in her jade mansion quickly rotated. The output of her true yuan suddenly doubled, and in an instant, she propped up her non-phase sword defense. But this time, non-phase sword defense was not her forte. The golden light shield was pushed to more than 300 meters away by her. The surrounding buildings were forcibly crushed, and the smooth flagstone road under their feet was also crushed for more than 1,000 feet. In the next moment, the circular sword defense suddenly elongated like a sharp golden sword that reached the sky. In an instant, it had elongated to over 10,000 feet. Non-phase sword defense was not necessarily circular, and Wang Wu had made a big heart demon oath. Her non-phase method could not hurt people, but it did not mean that it could not hurt things. This transformed version of non-phase sword defense might not be able to hurt Black, but it could undoubtedly penetrate his cloak. This was a battle that didn't need to be fought to the death. As long as Wang Wu could delay the time a little, with so many people in the City of Immortals, how could they not deal with Black? Moreover, this time he personally made his move in public. If he couldn't succeed, he could only die for a righteous cause. Of course, Wang Wu didn't mind giving him a push on the road to dying for a righteous cause. However, on the other hand, when the person behind the scenes decided to show up, it was, of course, the time for him to make a thunderous blow. The black cloak suddenly expanded in front of Wang Wu. 300 meters, 3,000 meters, 30,000 meters. In an instant, it seemed that the whole world was filled with this darkness. In contrast, the long and narrow sword defense seemed extremely small. The sudden change caught Wang Wu by surprise. She was slightly stunned and quickly made a change of move. However, the next moment she felt that she had lost contact with the world. Her hasty change of move made the sword defense suddenly stretch to dozens of miles, which was shaped like a spear, but it also completely missed. Until the surrounding was completely dark, Wang Wu still maintained the posture of thrusting with one hand. Looking at the sword defense that stretched for dozens of miles in front of her being swallowed by the darkness, she really couldn't say a word for a long time. Damn it, the preparation is really good. I even used my trump card, but in the end I was still played with in the secret room. Wang Wu looked around and determined that she had been banished to a special space that was absolutely dark. It was boundless and empty. Even the air that supported the survival of normal creatures did not exist. Of course, for a Taoist master of King Pill, internal breathing was commonplace, and the King Pill in the Jade Mansion could generate its own true yuan. So there was no need to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy from the outside world. Wang Wu's life was not in danger here. The only problem was that she couldn't get out. The black cloak was undoubtedly an immortal treasure. Moreover, it was an immortal treasure with more power than expected. He had used the cloak several times in the grand competition before, but it was only to create a dark cage with a radius of several miles. Therefore, Wang Wu was sure that she would not be trapped. However, in fact, the real use of the cloak was to open a passage and banish people to a closed and dead space. On this point, he really hit a good card, because this was the most effective and decisive move to deal with non-phase method. Wang Wu's non-phase sword defense had never been broken head-on, but it did not mean that she was invincible, nor did it mean that she could not be killed. When a person was completely isolated from the world and could no longer get in touch with the world for this world, he was a dead person. Alas, in the end, it's still information asymmetry. I racked my brains, but I still made a wrong move. Sure enough, doing this kind of work that I'm not good at doesn't end well. In the dark confinement space, Wang Wu shook her head helplessly, but she didn't seem too frustrated. I've done what I can do here. What happens next has nothing to do with me. No one can say anything wrong with me. I can just take advantage of it. It's a pity that you got involved. With that, Wang Wu turned around and faced the person behind her. In the darkness, Wang Wu was no longer alone. A strong and beautiful woman appeared behind her with a warm and cheerful smile on her face. Ha ha ha. Why are you still pretending to be a good person in front of me? The lead martial artist from the distant Song clan of Min province patted Wang Wu's shoulder enthusiastically. The great force released subconsciously made Wang Wu's body burst out with a crisp sound of bone impact. Wang Wu rubbed her shoulder and asked her, "Yu, are you ready?" Yu Jiu of Song smiled brightly and said, "Of course." "Seriously, Xiao Wu, I have been waiting for this day for a long time." "What about the distant Song clan?" Yu Jiu of Song's smile faded a little. "I actually lied to you on this issue. I didn't come here after dealing with all the things in the clan." "Then, there is no distant Song clan in the world." You. Wang Wu was surprised. "You really don't leave any leeway. Our original agreement didn't make things so rigid. But there is no doubt that this result is better for things." Yu Jiu of Song said indifferently. "I am a barbarian woman. I should do things bloody and barbaric. After wiping out the distant Song clan, I won't worry about anything anymore. Come on, it's time." "Well, since you said so, I won't be unreasonable." Wang Wu shook her head and smiled bitterly. "It's a pity that I wanted to take advantage of it. Listening to you, it seems that I won't be able to do so. The other side wants to isolate us from the game. Let them dream on." After Wang Wu finished, she held Yu's hand and looked up. Her eyes seemed to have penetrated the thick darkness. At the same time, in the whirlpool of stars, Tetragon suddenly stopped his pace of hunting. Wang Lu, who was behind him, almost bumped into her. "What's wrong?" Tetragon looked back in confusion and said, "Something seems to have happened in the City of Immortals." Wang Lu sighed and said, "There are things happening in the City of Immortals every day, from political struggles to celebrities. Occasionally, some celebrities are made public after they make a slip of the tongue at the wine table. There are thousands of things, big and small. What's new?" Tetragon ignored Wang Lu's nonsense, but turned around seriously. His eyes penetrated the vast sea of stars, and came to a certain point in the whirlpool of stars. "Black has appeared." Wang Lu was surprised. "Black? Isn't he blocked by you in the whirlpool of stars like a stray dog? How could he appear in the City of Immortals?" "I don't know." Tetragon shook his head and said, "I'm sure that since he was banished here, he has never had a chance to return to the City of Immortals under my eyes." "Then, according to the current actual situation, you've rolled your eyes a lot during this time?" Tetragon was silent and said, "Go back." "Go back?" Wang Lu was puzzled by this judgment. "Are you sure?" First, there was a clone of Tetragon in the City of Immortals, but Black dared to appear in front of the clone, which was simply a provocation. Returning to the City of Immortals at this time was somewhat like walking into a trap. Second, about that kind of harmful poison, could it be that they just let it go? They had just tracked the source of the poison and were ready to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. But now they had to leave everything and return to the City of Immortals? "I'm sure," Tetragon said seriously. "I also found that kind of poison in the City of Immortals." "Damn." Wang Lu could not help but scold. "Then let's go back, but are you sure the other party will let us go back so calmly? If it were me, I would arrange an opponent that we can't ignore to block in front of us so that we can't go forward or retreat." Before his voice fell, a dragon roar came from the sea of stars. Tetragon looked at Wang Lu with some anger and helplessness. Why did this guy never have a taboo in his mouth? However, as a dignified emperor, he would not care about such a taboo. The next moment, the sea of stars shattered, and a huge black dragon broke the space with its dragon teeth and suddenly attacked from the void. The huge mouth closed and 2 rows of sharp teeth shattered the space. Tetragon pulled Wang Lu back and retreated 100 miles to avoid it. Then a huge monster appeared in their field of vision. Its 2 dark golden eyes were bloodshot, and its gaze was as cold as a knife, which made people's hair stand on end. Ancestor Dragon? Tetragon was shocked. Ancestor Dragon, the ancestor of thousands of Gisaurus in the tombs of immortals. Chapter 737. The appearance of the ancestral dragon was unexpected to Tetragon. Ancestral dragon, as the name implied, was the ancestor of the tens of thousands of Gisaurus in the group of immortal tombs. In the earliest days, the Dixians subdued the ancestral dragon to multiply these strange creatures into tens of thousands and support the entire group of immortal tombs. The ancestral dragon might not have the most powerful power, but it had a very special significance. If the general Gisaurus were the bricks of the group of immortal tombs, then the ancestral dragon was the pillar. Through blood relationship, an ancestral dragon could be related to many Gisaurus. In other words, the loss of an ancestral dragon was likely to mean the loss of countless Gisaurus. Because of this, when the group of immortal tombs was built, the ancestral dragon became the most important thing. They were hidden extremely well, and the number of people who had the qualification to come into contact with the ancestral dragon could be counted on one's fingers. As far as I know, there are no more than 5 people, and that does not include Black, Wang Lu said. It's easy to explain. He's a traitor, and traitors always know some secrets that they shouldn't know. Yes, but among these 5 people, Bai Zhe is also included. Wang Lu was stunned. Are you going to involve that innocent and pitiful idiot as a scapegoat? Tetragon said. About the ancestral dragon, only a few people knew about it. Even if Black is a traitor and has some unknown means, his access to information is limited. Among these people, the only one who might leak the secret at present is Bai Zhe. Wang Lu touched his chin. You mean the black and white double spirits are in cahoots and have long had an impure connection? There's no more reasonable explanation at present. Tetragon shook his head. Well, let's not talk about this. As you said, we've met an opponent that can't be ignored. Let's solve it first. By the way, how much role can you play in this battle? Wang Lu said. I can cheer for you and then witness your brilliant victory. Otherwise, do you expect me, a new Yuanying stage cultivator, to fight the ancestral dragon? Wake up, Senior Tetragon. Tetragon shook his head and couldn't help but laugh. The next moment, his smile disappeared, and he flashed hundreds of miles away with Wang Lu. The black ancestral dragon had already crushed the space where it had originally been. For these living beings who had a large world within their bodies, controlling space was as natural as breathing. Similarly, destroying space was as easy as turning over a hand. Wang Lu wasn't sure if the Dixian Tetragon had the ability to survive the dimensional shattering, but he was sure that he couldn't. So, without needing anyone to say anything, he firmly held onto Tetragon's belt. Tetragon turned his head and was about to say something in amusement when he heard Wang Lu say righteously, "You'll be in charge of the vanguard, and I'll come up with a plan. We'll be in cahoots." Haha, you're really interesting. Tetragon laughed heartily and said, "Very well, I'll do as you say. Let's see how far you can go." Then, the first sentence that Wang Lu said made Tetragon hesitate. "If you can do it with ease, I suggest you wait and see first and not rush to make a move." Tetragon asked why. "Since the meat is delivered to the door, we have to see if it's poisonous, right?" Tetragon nodded and said, "Very well." The timing of this ancestral dragon's appearance was too coincidental. Obviously, someone deliberately manipulated it. However, could the person behind the scenes not see how strong Tetragon was? She had hunted dozens of Gisaurus in the whirlpool of stars. Although this ancestral dragon was strong, it was by no means the opponent of Tetragon. Combined with the changes in the City of Immortals at this time, Wang Lu felt that instead of treating this ancestral dragon as a stumbling block that prevented them from returning to the City of Immortals, it was better to say that it was pushed out to die. In that case, why would someone deliberately control such a precious card and send it to its death? Ancestral Dragon itself was also a kind of Gisaurus, which contained a big world in its body. And in this big world, there might be something important. Of course, the above was just speculation, but it did not prevent Wang Lu from making a relatively cautious choice. Senior Tetragon, with your speed, is it possible to bypass this guy and return to the City of Immortals? Tetragon flashed to avoid the bite of Ancestral Dragon and replied, if you mean flexibility, I can divide it into 3 parts before it can react. But when it comes to speed, at least in the Tombs of Immortals, no one can be faster than it. Oh, because of the magical ability of space? So, is there a way to subdue it? It's very difficult. Tetragon looked back and said, it will be very difficult with you. Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, or you can pass it to me so that I can instantly ascend to the highest level so that I won't drag you down. Is this your wisdom as a wolf? Tetragon said, I have begun to think about driving you out. Well, since it's not feasible to catch it alive, let's settle for the second best. Wait a minute, this big guy also has that strange poison in his body, right? Tetragon said, moreover, it's the source of the poison, at least one of the sources. Eliminating it can greatly curb the spread of the poison. Of course, it's still difficult to eradicate it, but it's better than letting it live. So, if you can't give a reasonable explanation as soon as possible, I don't think I will waste too much time. While the two of them were talking, Tetragon had completely suppressed the Ancestor Dragon by relying on her tyrannical strength. She used her immortal spirit power to create a terrifying gravitational field, which firmly pulled the hundreds of miles-long black Ancestor Dragon, forcing it to curl itself into a ball and roar endlessly in a humiliating posture. Of course, this consumed a lot of energy. If this gravitational field was placed in 9 regions, it could directly crush the headquarters of a middle-rank sect, and any cultivator below deity stage would be crushed into powder in an instant. It was a veritable killer move. Although the tone of Tetragon's words was steady, Wang Lu could feel that her immortal spirit power was already very tight. Wang Lu took a deep breath. Of course, in the whirlpool of stars, this action was more symbolic. Break the illusion. Tetragon repeated, break the illusion? Wang Lu didn't explain too much. Use your strongest break the illusion immortal technique to try to remove its camouflage. Tetragon narrowed her eyes and didn't think that the Ancestor Dragon in front of her had any camouflage. This was one of the 27 Ancestor Dragons that were set up when the group of immortal tombs was built. It was given the name Star Covering by Luo Shui, and it had a dark sea inside its body. Tetragon was no stranger to it. However, since Wang Lu insisted on it, Tetragon constructed a large-scale immortal technique with immortal spirit in her jade mansion, and then stimulated it with her eyes. A mirror suddenly appeared on top of the Ancestor Dragon's head, which was bound by gravity. Endless light poured down from the mirror like a waterfall and shone on the Ancestor Dragon. The Imperial Mirror broke all the illusions in the world. Boom! The Ancestor Star covering Ancestral Dragon's body instantly ignited with a flame, which instantly spread on the surface of the Ancestor Dragon's body. Tetragon looked at the flame in surprise. It was the break the illusion fire that burned when the camouflage was broken. The burning of the flame meant the destruction of the illusion. Is there really an illusion? Then, Tetragon looked at Wang Lu with even more surprised eyes. How do you know? Of course it's a guess. As an Ancestor Dragon and the source of the strange poison, it should be regarded as an important card. Unexpectedly, it actually came to Tetragon's door to kill it. No matter how he thought about it, there was something wrong with it. The biggest possibility was that the existence of this Ancestor Dragon was extraordinary. Once it was rashly killed, it might cause irreparable damage to the entire group of immortal tombs. However, Tetragon was not an idiot. How could he not recognize that the Ancestor Dragon was more important? Therefore, Wang Lu would certainly guess that it was enchanted by an illusion. Perhaps Tetragon couldn't see it because she didn't try her best. After all, no matter how abundant Dixion's immortal spirit was, there was no reason to wantonly squander it. Now it seemed like Wang Lu had guessed it right. When the flame burned out, the true appearance of the Ancestor Dragon was revealed. Its whole body was still dark, but it was dark red with a hint of gold. Seeing this luster, Senior Gem Emperor's pupils visibly shrank. Full red. Among the 27 ancestor dragons, only the one named Full Red had such a color. And Full Red was indeed different from Zhixing. Zhixing could be killed, but Full Red could not. This was related to the deeper secret of the group of immortal tombs. Well done. Tetragon lightly praised Wang Lu. Initially, it was just a joke to ask her to follow behind him and give him advice. No matter how smart Wang Lu was, could she compare with Tetragon in actual combat experience? Moreover, how much of Tetragon's immortal technique did Wang Lu see? How could he tailor a reasonable tactic for her? Tetragon just wanted to see the level of Wang Lu. Now that she had seen it, it was a pleasant surprise. But now a new problem arose. Since Full Red could not be killed, and it was impossible for them to get rid of the ancestor dragon in the whirlpool of stars, what should they do then? Seriously injure it and then leave it alone? Can you enter its inner world? Wang Lu's suggestion once again surprised Tetragon. You want to enter its body? I suspect that the other party has put something important in its body, Wang Lu said and slightly frowned. She felt that her groundless speculation was somewhat untenable, so she added, "It's not wrong to carefully check the composition of the meat that is delivered to the door." Very well. Senior Gem Emperor, on the other hand, gave considerable trust to Wang Lu. She slightly opened her mouth and a red light came out from it and fell on her palm. It was a key. I have the keys to the inner world of the 27 ancestor dragons, Tetragon explained. However, trying to open the inner world of a poisoned ancestor dragon means a great risk. Wang Lu thought for a while. I'll just rub outside, I won't go in. Up to you. Then just when Tetragon was about to throw out the red key, Full Red suddenly raised its dragon head high and let out an extremely painful roar. The next moment, countless cracks appeared on the dragon's body that stretched for hundreds of miles. Boom! Amidst the loud noise that shook the galaxy, Zhu Qi's entire body exploded and turned into endless flesh and blood powder. In the middle of the explosion of flesh and blood, a woman in white holding a bamboo long sword laughed wildly. Haha, want to trap me? Dream on. Chapter 738. Wang Lu was shocked again. In the decades that he had known Wang Wu, he had been shocked more than once or twice, but this time he would definitely be ranked in the top 3. To be more specific, it was like knowing that his wife, who had shared the same bed with him for many years, was actually a man, and that she had hundreds of lovers outside, and that she had miraculously given birth to a lion's head after being pregnant for 3 years and 6 months. And all the surprises boiled down to such a question: why are you here? Wang Wu, who broke free from the dark world, was also curious when she saw Wang Lu and Tetragon. Instead of answering, she asked, "Why are you here?" She looked at the two of them and said, "Are you here for your honeymoon?" Wang Lu glanced at Tetragon, wondering if she, an ancient person from 16,000 years ago, could understand the meaning of the word honeymoon. Fortunately, Tetragon didn't seem to understand. Or, she was still in the shock of Zhu Qi's explosion and hadn't recovered. Wang Lu didn't know what secrets Zhu Qi had, but it seemed that Zhu Qi's death was really significant, so much so that Tetragon was shocked speechless. But that wasn't the problem now. "Why are you here?" Wang Lu repeated his question, and then asked seriously, "Are you okay?" Wang Wu smiled and said, "Ha, of course I'm okay. Who do you think I am?" Wang Lu frowned, went forward, pulled Wang Wu's wrist, and tried to feel her pulse. "What?" Wang Wu pulled back her hand, not giving Wang Lu a chance to show off. "Are you really okay?" Wang Lu asked. "According to your style, the first thing you should do is to ask me for the high compensation for the work-related injury. Putting on such a heroic posture and saying that you're okay, I always feel like you're out of your mind." "You're the one out of your mind." Wang Wu scolded, looked around, and then asked Wang Lu, "Why are you here? Or what the hell is this place? The Tomb of Immortals? Damn, how did I end up in the Tomb of Immortals?" Wang Lu took a breath and said, "What the hell is going on? What else could be going on? I was tricked in the City of Immortals." Wang Wu shrugged indifferently and said, "The other side grasped my characteristic of being good at defense and not offense, so they opened a passage to the claustrophobic space, intending to break my non-phase method. However, after all, I'm a heaven-defying expert, so I crushed the opponent's plot with my masculine power." Wang Lu looked back at Senior Gem Emperor, who was still in a sluggish state. and inwardly said, accurately speaking, you actually crushed something that shouldn't be crushed. But now the important thing is not this. In other words, the other side has dared to openly make a move in the City of Immortals? Wang Lu pondered and said, the progress is faster than expected. Did something happen? With that, Wang Lu looked at Wang Wu with inquiring eyes. During this time he accompanied Tetragon to hunt in the Sea of Stars, so he knew nothing about what happened in the City of Immortals. Thus he could only ask Wang Wu what happened. Wang Wu thought about it and felt that it was too troublesome to describe the changes that happened during this period. Thus she nodded and said, yes. You answer the short answer question as a question of judgment? Do you still want the allowance? There's an allowance? Why didn't you say so earlier? It's not a problem for me to give you a detailed report. Wang Wu beamed with joy and said, I'll tell you everything I know. With my current value, this report is worth 5,000 spirit stones per 1,000 words. Wang Lu said coldly, and then I'll wait for you to write a situation report from zero? Ha ha ha, that's just the first in a series of reports. Next, I want to write a group of immortals. I can give you 20% of the royalties. While the master and disciple were talking, Tetragon suddenly intervened and said, Wang Lu, you two go back to the City of Immortals as soon as possible. I want to deal with things here with all my might. Wang Lu listened carefully and immediately grasped the key point. Deal with it with all your might? You mean? Tetragon nodded and said, I want to take back the avatar in the City of Immortals. That's the most important deterrent weapon in the City of Immortals. You want to take it back, so you want us to go back and take it over as soon as possible? Wang Lu smiled and said, in other words, Senior, you have fully trusted us. Only you. Tetragon said to Wang Lu and then glanced at Wang Wu from the corner of his eyes. Although he didn't say much, the almost overflowing killing intent in his eyes was still chilling. The next moment Tetragon flashed away. Wang Wu stared at the direction where he went with lingering fear. After a long time she said to Wang Lu, did you see that? She just cast me an affectionate glance. What kind of shining temperament in me attracted her? She was probably shocked by how shameless you are. Wang Lu shook his head and said, although Tetragon didn't say it clearly, I'm afraid it's not a good idea for you to explode that Gisaurus with brute force. Wang Wu scoffed at this and said, what else? Wait for that guy to digest me? If we really want to talk about the responsibility of this matter, it's the responsibility of those Dixian people who can't even take good care of their own pets. Since this Gisaurus is very important, don't let it fall into the hands of the enemy. It's already very generous of me not to blame them for not taking good care of their own dog. Wang Lu couldn't say anything more. Wang Wu was completely right. From the beginning to the end, she had done nothing wrong, so the responsibility could not be held against her. Therefore, before Tetragon left, although his anger toward Wang Wu was almost overflowing, he didn't take any action. On the contrary, she entrusted the City of Immortals to the two of them. In fact, she entrusted it to Wang Wu. With Wang Lu's current Yuanying stage cultivation base, it was useless in the immortal level war. The only one who could really serve as the main force was the number 1 King Pill in 9 regions. Alright, let's go back to the City of Immortals. According to your description, I'm afraid it's already chaotic over there. Wang Wu said, so we have another choice. After the chaos is over, we can go back to clean up the mess. Well, don't stare at me like that. I'm just giving you a reference. Cough. After that, Wang Wu suddenly coughed. Wang Lu's eyes immediately turned to her. Cough. This was a bit rare for a Taoist master of King Pill, moreover, the famous number 1 King Pill in 9 regions. Considering that she had just used an unbelievable amount of brute force to forcefully blow up an ancestral dragon, it was indeed a little too unbelievable to say that she was unscathed and unscathed. The number 1 King Pill in 9 regions. This title was full of mystery for others, but the relationship between Wang Lu and her was, after all, different. Wang Lu did not deliberately inquire about what she had experienced in the past 150 years, nor did he ask what kind of card she held in her hand. However, as a cultivator of non-phase method, he could roughly judge the limit of Wang Wu's strength. It was no problem for her to be able to preserve herself in the body of a Gisaurus. However, to burst the internal space of a Gisaurus with brute force and crush the Gisaurus, This was far beyond the scope of non-phase method. Even if the version of Wang Wu's non-phase method had been updated, the basic framework was, after all, set. She could not have such a powerful explosive force. To burst the G-Saurus, she must have paid a considerable price. In the face of Wang Lu's hidden concern, Wang Wu waved her hand and said, "It's okay, I was just accidentally poisoned." Poisoned? At the same time, in the City of Immortals, a major event that shocked countless people happened. In the central arena of Immortal One area, the battle between the Wanxian League and Tetragon began again. So far, Tetragon still maintained her undefeated record. Again and again, she beheaded the elite cultivators who represented the Wanxian League. No matter what kind of opponent she faced and what kind of rules she followed, she always won. She won so much that people had nothing to say and even felt despair. All the land under the sky belonged to the king, and all the people on the shore of the land belonged to the king. With this magical ability, although Tetragon seemed to be 1 against 10,000, in fact, her advantage in the arena was much greater than that of the previous Dixian cultivators. So much so that she didn't even bother to make a move. Relying on her avatar, she suppressed the Wanxian League until they couldn't breathe. Today, the morale of the Wanxian League was getting lower and lower, and more people no longer believed that the Wanxian League could win the final victory. The central arena of Immortal One area, which could accommodate millions of spectators, was no longer full. Of course, there were fewer people who were willing to fight with Tetragon. Today, most of the people who appeared were once unknown rookies because they had no burden. Tetragon was merciless, but it was by no means ruthless. Even if they lost, they wouldn't have to worry about their lives. On the other hand, as long as they could show a few shining points in the arena, they were likely to win the favor of the big shots in the immortal cultivation world. This was a deal that was guaranteed to be profitable no matter how one looked at it. However, today in the central arena, it was not a shrewd businessman but a devout cultivator. Zhu Shiyao, a disciple of Lingjian school, is willing to learn from senior swordsmanship. In the center of the arena, the big sister of Spirit Sword Sect was as slender as a pine tree. Her wide red and white robe made her feminine figure more slender and beautiful. However, the great sun golden brilliant sword in her hand made her temperament appear incomparably strong. In fact, at this moment, there were very few people who still had the guts to fight with Senior Gem Emperor in front of everyone. Zhu Shiyao's appearance was a great surprise to many people. This was not the previous grand competition. Now there was no limit to the stage. In other words, the Tetragon in the arena was the real Dixian level. Except for the most famous supremes in the Wanxian League, who else was qualified to fight with her? Zhu Shiyao might be talented, and her sword spirit root combined with stellar sword was simply unprecedented. However, she was only in the King Pill stage. In front of Dixian, she was like an ant. "Senior, please enlighten me." With that, Zhu Shiyao pointed the great sun golden brilliant sword at Tetragon. The straight sword blade was like the unshakable fighting intent of a young girl. The next moment, Zhu Shiyao's eyes flickered. She took a step forward and turned her slender wrist. The great sun golden brilliant sword flew out of her hand and turned into a flash of light. This sword move was tricky and exquisite, which made many old monsters of Yuaning and deity stage speechless. Zhu Shiyao really lived up to her reputation as the big sister of Lingjian school. In terms of swordsmanship alone, perhaps no cultivator of the same generation could compare with her. However, in front of Tetragon, this sword move was still too immature. And just as people were thinking about how overwhelming Tetragon's victory would be, swish! The great sun golden brilliant sword penetrated Tetragon's body without any hindrance. Tetragon's figure flickered, and then with a bang, he disappeared without a trace. Zhu Shiyao withdrew her great sun golden brilliant sword in amazement. Her somewhat blurred eyes looked around the arena, but she could not find the trace of her opponent. A moment later, she even took out a pair of bulky glasses from her mustard seed bag and clipped it on the bridge of her nose. Apparently, she had begun to doubt her eyesight. However, Tetragon had indeed disappeared. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of people in the audience were silent. They watched Zhu Shiyao perform a one-woman show in the arena with their mouths agape and tongue-tied. But the other side was nowhere to be seen. After a long time, someone suddenly raised a question. Does it mean we won? Chapter 739. As the most important event in 9 regions in the past 100 years, the grand competition had spawned many duels that were destined to be recorded in history in less than a year. In the opening battle, Xianmo's yin and yang separation and Hichu Doran's yin and yang incarnation, and later, when the Wanxian League was in decline, Wang Lu's planned counterattack. These were all classic battles that were well known and memorable for countless people. However, compared with today's battle, all the previous battles seemed to be overshadowed. In many people's view, perhaps there would not be such a dramatic battle in 9 regions in the next few hundred years. To some extent, this battle would rewrite the history of 9 regions. Zhu Shiyao versus Tetragon. When Zhu Shiyao stepped onto the field, everyone believed that this was a hopeless battle. However, after the start of the battle, it quickly ushered in an unexpected major turning point. Zhu Shiyao brandished her sword, and Tetragon disappeared without a trace. For the time it took to drink a cup of tea, there was a dead silence in the central fighting arena. Zhu Shiyao put on her bulky glasses and unfolded the power of her stellar divine eyes to the limit. In the audience, people could not help but help Zhu Shiyao find the trace of her opponent like crazy. After no one knew how long, someone carefully asked a question. Could it be that we won? This was, of course, an incredible conjecture. Many people wanted to laugh when they heard it. However, the next moment that person put forward a piece of evidence that could not be ignored. Because those Dixian people don't look right. People immediately turned their attention to the Dixian people sitting on the rostrum. Sure enough, the Dixian people who came out to watch the battle looked very serious. On the other hand, before this, no matter how great the scene on the arena was, they would remain calm and indifferent, and they would never doubt their master. But now they were hesitant, confused, and even fearful. Thus, the people of the Wanxian League gradually realized that perhaps Tetragon would not come back. Regardless of the reason, according to the rules of the martial arts arena, when one party is unable to respond to the battle for a long period of time, it will be judged as having lost the match. From the time Tetragon left the stage until now, the time before the loss was decided was getting shorter and shorter. As a result, more and more people came to witness this historic scene. The Wanxian League seemed to have finally seen the dawn of victory in the grand competition. This battle, even though it was an inexplicable victory, it was still a victory. According to Tetragon's words, as long as the Wanxian League could beat her in any field, she would admit defeat on behalf of the Dixian League. However, in the past month, people had become accustomed to seeing the heroes of the Union of 10,000 Immortals being defeated in this arena. Those peerless experts who used to be aloof in the past could not even win a single victory. However, after this battle, people would soon see Tetragon lowering his head. As long as they recalled that scene, many people's blood would boil. Many people couldn't even hold back and cheered loudly in the audience. This kind of emotion quickly spread, so that the audience soon began to sing the theme song about Zhu Shiyao that was composed and performed by the cultivators themselves. In their view, this indifferent and low-key big sister of Lingjian school was cuter than anyone else in the world at this time. However, at this time Zhu Shiyao's words came from the arena. A sentence that was destined to be recorded in history, and remembered by countless people for life. I admit defeat. No one could accurately describe the mood of the millions of people in the audience at that moment. From the hot crater of the volcano to the cold windy snowfield, perhaps it was not even 1/10,000th of the feeling at this time. What did she just say? On the rostrum, the red-robed elder's eyes widened and his hand kept digging in his ear, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Zhu Shiyao, who had already won, actually said that she admitted defeat? What was wrong with her? Could it be that Tetragon abandoned the majesty of the emperor and began to use some secret evil method to quietly control Zhu Shiyao's mind, so that she would take the initiative to admit defeat? Impossible. With the power of Tetragon, he could make Zhu Shiyao collapse with just a breath, so why did he have to do it so sneakily? Zhu Shiyao made her own decision. The two supremes beside him were also so shocked that their jaws were almost dislocated. The next moment, one of the supremes from Royal Soldier Sect, who pursued the way of decisive killing, suddenly slapped his chin, making a crisp sound. Then he roared, "Hurry up and contact the elders of Lingjin School. Let them quickly come and discipline their traitorous disciple." However, no matter how fast these supremes reacted, it was still too late. In the arena, Zhu Shiyao seriously put away her glasses and shook her head in frustration. The next moment, she took a step and left the central arena. With this step, there was no room for turning back. No one knew how many angry sighs were woven into a sea of disappointment in an instant. A few cultivators with bad tempers even charged towards Zhu Shiyao, ready to question her about her intentions. However, before these people arrived, there was finally someone who arrived first. Fengyin Daoist master's sword cut through the void and came to the city of immortals from an infinitely distant place and stood next to Zhu Shiyao. When he appeared, those murderous cultivators could not help but stop and no longer dared to approach. It was one thing to question a king pill stage Zhu Shiyao, but it was another thing to question the leader of one of the 5 uniques in the world. Fortunately this time, Fengyin didn't seem to intend to protect her too much. Yao what's going on? Zhu Shiyao looked at Fengyin with some embarrassment. A moment later, she bit her lip and suddenly thrust her great sun golden brilliant sword toward Fengyin. This was undoubtedly a rebellious act, but Fengyin didn't seem to care. He let the sword light flash in front of him, and then he froze for a moment and sighed helplessly. Zhu Shiyao was not good with words, so it was difficult for her to express her thoughts. However, it did not prevent her from resorting to her sword. Extreme sword language. Not only Fengyin could understand Zhu Shiyao's sword rain, but there were also many cultivators around her who saw the sword light and then understood the words in the sword light. Senior Tetragon's magical power is so great that she has tied my hands and feet, without even making a move. I have tried my best to find a chance to win, but I can't even catch a trace of her. My eyes are full of lines of nothingness. I can't see the chance to win, and I can't even make a sword strike to win. In this case, I can only admit defeat. After listening to this explanation, the people present could not even speak. Although there seemed to be thousands of alpacas galloping in their hearts, although there was a constant roar in their hearts, are you retarded? The other side has run away and left the arena. She's not in the arena at all. Of course, you can't see any trace of her even if you're blind. What's in your head? You can't even understand such a simple truth. However, looking at Zhu Shiyao's delicate and timid posture, who could say anything? Judging from her appearance alone, it was really hard to imagine that she was actually the strongest cultivator among her peers. Even Wang Lu did not have a high chance of winning against her. Of course, at this time, people did not know that Wang Lu had broken through to the nascent soul realm. However, they really understood why Lingjian School continued to train new cultivators after having Zhu Shiyao, until Wang Lu appeared. Because this senior sister was really unreliable. With such an IQ, it was really hard to rest assured that she could do anything. She could not even fight well. If she inherited the position of the head in the future, perhaps Lingjian School would really be destroyed. In silence, Zhu Shiyao frowned and raised the sword in her hand again. Master, did I do something wrong? Fengyin shook his head with a smile. No, you did nothing wrong. Zhu Shiyao was a little uneasy. I didn't perform well enough, right? No, you did very well. The opponent was the top figure in Dixian, so it's normal for you to lose. Then, he turned his head and said to everyone around him, Yao, she did make a low-level mistake in the battle, but maybe because of this she did not make a bigger mistake. This is a victory that we should not touch, Fengyin said faintly. It's an unfair victory. Of course, very soon someone raised a doubt. But after all, it is still an unquestionable victory. Isn't it too ridiculous to care about the strength of character at this time? Fengyin said, ridiculous? Do you dare to say that you won with a clear conscience in front of Tetragon? At least she should be convinced of her defeat. Yes, Tetragon is not a sore loser, but it doesn't mean that she's a pedantic fool. When Fengyin said this, he saw that many people around him had revealed a thoughtful look. However, there were also many people who still didn't understand. Therefore, he had to make it clear. This victory can only be given to us by Tetragon, and we can't take the initiative to fight for it. Now that he had said this, unless one was really stupid, one would understand this logic. At this time, a burst of laughter suddenly came. Haha, well said. When Fengyin heard this voice, he was slightly surprised. Shizhou-jin? The person who came was Shizhou-jin. As he strode forward, the crowd involuntarily opened a spacious passage for him. This was the treatment of a supreme-level cultivator. You're indeed worthy to be the sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect. Without your words, I'm afraid everyone would make a big mistake on impulse today. In the future, we have to cooperate sincerely with the Dixian people. If we lose the most important mutual recognition for a formal victory, how can we fight side by side in the future? Shijojin shook his head as he said that. Then, he came to the front of Feng Yin and said with a smile, Feng Yin Taoist Master, this time, I really want to thank your Lingjian school for your help. Feng Yin froze for a moment and then responded with a polite smile. When he was about to open his mouth, he saw a black light flashing in front of him. Almost subconsciously, Feng Yin summoned his stellar sword and blocked the black light before it reached his body. At this time he could not help but be glad that Feng Yin had stellar divine eyes, which could see through this sneak attack in advance. If his reaction was half a second slower, that black light would have stained his body. However, although Feng Yin himself blocked the sneak attack, it was too late to protect the people around him. In an instant, Shijojin had sent a bit of black light into the space between Zhu Shiyao's eyebrows. Ha ha ha, Feng Yin Taoist Master, this is my gift to you. I hope you will like it. Before his voice fell, Shijojin had turned into a cloud of clear shadow and was shattered by Feng Yin's angry lightning sword. Chapter 740. Poisoned. In the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu was surprised to get this answer. Yes, I don't feel very good. It seems that I've been poisoned. Wait a minute, what's with your expression? Is being poisoned that hard to accept? It's not syphilis. Wang Lu sighed. To be honest, I'd rather it's syphilis. What the hell, what am I in your eyes? I'm serious. Wang Lu said and grabbed Wang Wu's hand. This is not a joke. What's your situation now? Wang Wu was stunned. Hey, are you serious? You're already so old, yet you're still doing this kind of mushy business? When you were still a child, you didn't do this kind of thing. The more you live, the more you age. What the hell? Hurry up and die for me. Although Wang Lu said so, he didn't put down his hand. Instead, against the other party's resistance, he felt her pulse. There seems to be no problem. You're not trying to show off with your phantom limb, are you? Wang Wu sighed. If even you can feel the problem, I would have already applied for a paid vacation. I really don't feel very good, but it's not serious enough for you to care about me. If there's a problem, I will say it. Considering that Wang Wu was an innovative talent who could create her own method, she shouldn't be mistaken about her physical condition. Not to mention the defense and survivability of non-phase method was unparalleled since ancient times. Perhaps it could really make the ancient strange poison ineffective. However, this was not a trivial matter that could be taken lightly. After sorting out his thoughts, Wang Lu said, Just now Tetragon told me one thing, and I don't think she's joking. After Wang Lu explained that the strange poison had eroded a large number of Gisaurus, and that the Dixian had suffered a lot, Wang Wu suddenly put on a dignified look. What the hell? That vicious? Wait, according to what you said, that strange poison is extremely contagious. Aren't you courting death by sticking so close to me? Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, Asking such an idiotic question, are you really hoping for a mushy answer? This isn't like you. You've lived for so long and you're still looking forward to this kind of trick? Forget it, wait for me for a while. As Wang Wu spoke, she calmed down and carefully sensed the state of her body once more. After a long while she judged. There are indeed some unclean things. They're very strange, but I can still deal with them. However. But what? I'm the only one who can handle it. I'm afraid the others won't be able to. What do the others have to do with you? Wang Lu frowned. With this person's moral character, he wouldn't normally care about the life and death of others. So, although I don't care very much, for the sake of fighting side by side with him, I will mourn for Shijojin for a moment, Wang Wu said, lowered her head, blinked her eyes, and then raised her head again. The mourning is over. Wait a minute, did you just say Shijojin? Wang Lu's thoughts turned quickly. Shijojin should be in the City of Immortals. You mean that strange poison has spread to the City of Immortals? Damn it, that's the most densely populated area. Thinking of this, Wang Lu immediately urged his Yuanying in his jade mansion, and flew to the City of Immortals. There was no time to consider that there were many key details hidden in this matter, Nor did he have time to consider why the other party chose to release such a big killing weapon at this time. Wang Lu only knew that the earlier he got back to the City of Immortals, the better. Poisoned? In the City of Immortals, Fengyin Taoist master frowned. His eyes were bloodshot, and his palms were constantly opening and closing. He looked extremely irritated. Opposite to Fengyin, a sage-like old man said softly, "Your disciple's symptoms are very strange. Based on this old man's many years of medical experience, the possibility of poisoning is the highest. However, this kind of poison has never been seen before, and its toxicity can't be figured out. Just considering the method used to poison the disciple, I'm afraid this poison will be very fierce." Fengyin Taoist master impatiently asked, "Supreme Xianxia's medical skill is the best in the world. Is there really no way?" Supreme Xianxia smiled bitterly and said, "How could I dare to be the best in the world? Your sect's Taoist master Guanhai's excellent use of medicine is an eye-opener for me. This strange poison is so contagious that it should be difficult for everyone present to survive. Fortunately, Taoist master Guanhai sealed the poison in your disciple's body with a great wall-fire pill, which allowed us, these old bones, to have a peace of mind. And since even Taoist master Guanhai is helpless, we are even more helpless." At this time, a female cultivator who looked 34 or 35 years old and dressed like a lady also said, "Fengyin Taoist master, I think we might as well do two things at the same time. On the one hand, we will continue to gather more people for consultation. On the other hand, I suggest that the one who started the trouble should be the one who started it, so we should find Shizhojin as soon as possible." Supreme Xianxia had a different opinion. Taoist master Kaiyun also has a point. Judging from the other party's way of doing things, he planted the poison but is not in a hurry to stimulate it. Obviously there is a follow-up move. But because of this, Fengyin Taoist master, you should be more careful not to put yourself in danger. Fengyin Taoist master shook his head with a wry smile. Yao Er's life is uncertain, how can I just sit back and watch? However, just as he was about to get up, a hand landed on his shoulder. Fengyin Taoist master, I can understand your mentality. If Chonghua encountered this, I would also be anxious. They represent the future of the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, and they are indeed more important than us. But at the same time we must realize that the current 9 regions needs us old guys more. Behind us there are still thousands of Zhu Shiyao and Chonghua. At this moment, only Hichu Daoren could make Fengyin Taoist master completely calm down. Taoist friend, he too is right. Now is not the time to be emotional. However, Shizhojin's whereabouts are unknown, so we can't just sit back and do nothing. If he succeeds again, the consequences will be unimaginable. Supreme Xianxia said, "Yes, Taoist master Guanhai's Great Wall Fire Resistance Pill is limited. Once Shizhojin wantonly spreads this strange poison, it will be difficult for us to stop its spread." But what exactly is going on with Shizhojin? With his temper, it's hard to imagine that he would do such a thing. At this time, Fengyin Taoist master gradually recovered his calmness and quickly thought of the situation reported by Yin Xian not long ago. 5th junior sister still couldn't make it in time? However, if the situation has changed, why didn't she report to me as soon as possible? Could it be? Thinking of this, Fengyin Taoist master was shocked, and immediately tried to contact Wang Wu with the spirit sword heavenly talisman. As a result, can't contact her? Where did that guy go? This time she actually... Fengyin Taoist master finally recovered his calm, but in an instant it began to disappear. At this time, a young man in a red and white uniform appeared beside him with a smile on his face. "Uncle sect leader, good news." Fengyin sighed. What good news could there be at this time? Moreover, Zhu Shiyao was still in a coma, yet he could still laugh? In Xian, this kid, after losing the balance of Xianxi, who represented absolute rationality, he simply became a bit crazy. Shizhojin has appeared again. Where? Fengyin grabbed Yin Xian's arm, subconsciously exerted his strength, and with a crack sound the bone was broken. Yin Xian let out a pleasantly surprised laugh. "Ha ha ha, thank you, Uncle Sect Leader. I now have one more bone than the average person. Okay, don't pinch it, I'll get down to business." He appeared in B7 area and happened to meet junior sister Luli. And then, what? Feng Yin's eyes almost popped out. He met Lu Li? Yes, obviously he came prepared. Exactly the same as when he dealt with junior sister Zhu Shiyao. Although junior sister Lu Li's reaction is very fast, it's still impossible to guard against it. Right now, she is being jointly rescued by Uncle Lucien and Uncle Fang He, so she should be fine in a short time. Hearing that Lu Li was fine for the time being, Feng Yin's mood dropped a bit, but it was still extremely complicated. What kind of good news is this? Yin Xian said with a smile. There's one more sample for research. There should be a few Great Wall fire resistance pills left by 7th uncle, so it's not a problem to save their lives for the time being. In this case, it's a good thing to have more samples. Feng Yin Taoist master was about to open his mouth when he suddenly saw Yin Xian's body shake, and his face changed dramatically. In Feng Yin's stellar divine eyes, Yin Xian's face actually showed a sign of death. What's the matter with you? Yin Xian said. Out of curiosity, I just tried to separate a little poison from junior sister Lu Li's body and personally experienced it. It's really an amazing poison. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Are you crazy? No, didn't I just say that at this time the more samples the better? I can't play any other role now. As the real big brother hiding behind the scenes, shouldn't I at least do something for the junior sisters? With that, Yin Xian grinned. Don't worry, I've taken the Great Wall fire resistance pill in advance so it's not contagious. Moreover, I've also taken 7 typical antidotes at the same time. What happens in my body next must be of great research value. So seniors, please don't let my sacrifice down and work hard to study it. With that, Yin Xian closed his eyes and fell to the ground with a thud. Around him, a group of supremes and powerful figures were stunned. At the same time, in a corner of the City of Immortals, a young man who had been sleeping for a long time suddenly opened his eyes. What is this place? The young man looked around. In his hazy sight, he could vaguely see a bright and spacious bedroom. The room was burning with tranquilizing incense. However, the young man's heart was still full of fear. Dead face, where are you? His mind was in chaos, and only that dead face became clearer and clearer. He subconsciously called out, Dead face, are you still there? However, his subconscious call was miraculously answered. Yes. Chapter 741. In the whirlpool of stars, 2 beams of light shuttled back and forth at an extremely fast speed. However, compared with the vast sea of stars, they seemed slow and sluggish. Wang Lu drove rouge tears, regardless of the turbulence of his yuanying, and pushed the speed to the limit. After a long period of acceleration, his speed at this time was enough to stun most high-level yuanying stage cultivators. However, for him this was still not enough. At the current speed, it would take at least half a day to get back to the City of Immortals, and half a day was enough for the fallen immortals to give birth. On the other side, the woman who followed closely behind Wang Lu seemed to be in no hurry, revealing a contemplative look. Speaking of which, I have a problem that I haven't been able to figure out. Damn, you're still thinking about life at this time? Wang Lu could not help but be impatient. Wang Wu waved her hand and said, I don't need to think about a tough life. I really think of a question. Why didn't the other party release this highly diffused poison earlier? If it was at the beginning of the grand competition, such as at the opening ceremony, I'm afraid the entire Wanxian League would have been wiped out. But now, after being familiar with the City of Immortals and operating for nearly a year, we would have more or less room to adapt. So what do you think? Wang Wu said, I don't understand, that's why I asked. However, this poison happened to spread shortly after Tetragon's resuscitation, right? Do you doubt Tetragon? Wang Wu said, don't you doubt it? Indeed, in theory at this time anyone is worthy of suspicion, but as for Tetragon, I will choose to trust her. Oh, Wang Wu smiled in surprise and said, explain to me in depth, where does this trust come from? When did you become so good that you could even subdue Dixian? Wang Lu also deeply admired this woman's psychological quality that she could eat meat anytime and anywhere. So he responded, we've lived together for so many years, don't you know me? Fine, let's trust Tetragon for now. How do you explain the phenomenon of her resuscitation and the spread of the toxin almost simultaneously? Wang Lu said, it's very simple. Think about how she woke up. Oh, I've asked Xianemo and a few others before. Tetragon's resuscitation was an accident. Because all the Dixian were gradually resuscitation after the group of immortal tombs was opened, and the time was roughly the same. What reason does Tetragon have to be out of sync with the others? Aren't you thinking too much? Dixian's revival was an accident in itself, so what if there was some error in the timing? When we first awakened Xianemo, the resuscitation of her by Zhe and the others was not completely synchronized. Wang Lu nodded. That's why it's even stranger. Dixian's resuscitation can have a sequence, but wouldn't the person who woke up first wake up the people later? When we first met Bai Zhe in Heavenly Earth, he came to wake up Xianemo. However, after the collective resuscitation of Dixian, Tetragon woke up half a year later, and Xianemo and the others knew nothing about it. It can only mean that they tried to wake up Tetragon but failed. It's also possible that they don't know that Xianemo is asleep here. But what you said makes sense. So, Tetragon's resuscitation is indeed a bit strange. If coupled with the spread of the strange poison, do you want to say that someone is manipulating all this behind the scenes? It's hard to say because there's some logic that doesn't make sense. Waking up Tetragon is obviously not good for the spread of the poison. These days she has slaughtered dozens of Gisaurus in the whirlpool of stars, which has greatly inhibited the spread of the poison. Moreover, because she left a clone in the City of Immortals, the other party has not been able to make their move in the City of Immortals. Nil? Wang Lu looked at the woman in white in front of him. The latter looked innocent, as if she had forgotten the dead red ancestor dragon. In short, Tetragon's resuscitation is obviously not conducive to the spread of the strange poison. It doesn't make sense to say that both of these are intentional by the person behind the scenes. But we might as well assume that the strange poison was not in the hands of the fallen immortals from the beginning. It's likely that it was suppressed by Tetragon, or at least closely related to her. Therefore, if the fallen immortals want to take out the strange poison in the tombs of immortals, they will inevitably wake up Tetragon. Wang Wu said, "Don't you think there are too many assumptions? So there's another guess. Waking up Tetragon is for a bigger goal. The spread of the strange poison is just an appetizer. A bigger goal? For example, the bottom secret of the tombs of immortals?" Wang Lu said, "The problem that makes Tetragon put down the City of Immortals without hesitation and go all out to deal with it is mostly that bottom secret. But now there's no time to explore the bottom secret. I'm afraid the City of Immortals needs more help." In fact, there were dozens of elders of Heavenly Sage Hall in the City of Immortals, which was a shining place. However, Wang Lu had no doubt that he could play a role in the City of Immortals. As for Tetragon, now I can only trust her. Back to the original topic, why did Wang Lu choose to trust Tetragon? Because now he could only trust her. Is there still no way? Just now, Supreme Kuchin has also seen it. The best solution is to cut it in half. Cut it in half. How sure is Kuchin? 20% sure that the poison can be completely removed. In other words, in 80% of cases not only can it not guarantee safety, but even the poison may not be completely removed. Yes. What did Supreme Tianluan say? Based on the current sample, it will take at least 3 years to restore more than 50% of the poison. Then, according to the ratio, it will take at least 300 years to restore the poison perfectly. Don't be anxious, the Sisters of the Earth Spirit Hall will be here soon. They can also be regarded as poison experts, so maybe they can help. Maybe? In Immortal One area of the City of Immortals, many elders of Heavenly Sage Hall surrounded 3 huge white jade coffins. The white jade coffins were covered with hundreds of restrictive spells. There were 3 people lying inside, 1 man and 2 women. They were the 3 successor disciples of Lingjian's school, who were previously poisoned. Many elders carefully observed through the restrictive spells, deducing the poison and detoxification plan. However, no matter who it was, they all frowned and were at a loss. In fact, it had only been half an hour since Zhu Shiyao was poisoned. However, in a short period of time, no less than 100 cultivators from various sects had visited to discuss the treatment plan. In the end, even the sect leaders of the 5 uniques tried to treat her, but they still failed. At this time, Fengyin Taoist Master and Supreme Xianxia were quietly waiting for the arrival of the Earth Spirit Hall sisters in front of the white jade coffins. The two sisters had a resounding reputation in the central region. Their poison path was infinitely awe-inspiring, and they were even more arrogant. Even this grand competition could not make them come out. This time it was Supreme He Tu who sent people to invite them out with heavy gifts. However, at this time, even Supreme He Tu did not dare to hope that the two of them could remove the poison in Zhu Shiyao's body. A moment later, two purple clouds came. The Poison Path Sisters of the Earth Spirit Hall walked side by side in a dignified manner. After a cup of tea time, the two sisters who stood in front of the coffins took 2 steps back with pale faces. Their faces were enshrouded with purple mist, which showed their inner turmoil. The elder sister bit her lip and cupped her hands toward Fengyin and said, "Sorry, the two of us can't do anything about it. The previous deposit will be returned in full." With that, the two of them rode the purple clouds and flew away, leaving behind a group of Heavenly Sage Hall elders who sighed at this. The sisters of the Earth Spirit Hall can't do it. Who else should we look for next? The flood dragon of the green dragon pool? The poison of that flood dragon is fierce, and its body is immune to all kinds of poison. The flood dragon's immunity to all kinds of poison depends on the dragon pearl. Do you expect it to spit out the dragon pearl and give it to us? What's more, if a dragon pearl can detoxify the poison, do you think Fengyin Taoist Master will sit back and watch his 3 successor disciples fall unconscious? Alas, it's indeed the means of the fallen immortal. As soon as they made their move, they made the heroes of the Wanxian League helpless. They are indeed better than Dixian. Do those Dixian still say the same thing? Yes, they said that this poison once made the leader of Dixian helpless, only by cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. But this poison has now spread in the city of immortals. I don't know how many disciples and elders of the big sects have been unfortunately poisoned. If we want to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, who can do it? When the situation broke out, our response was timely. Relying on the city of immortals, we finally controlled the situation. The poison people have been isolated, so it's not out of control yet. But Shi Zhijin's whereabouts are unknown, and he may appear again at any time. Alas, I don't know what those legendary supervisors of Shangjing sect are doing. Hey, it seems like someone else is coming. At this time, they still don't know how to retreat. Do they want to take the opportunity to hype themselves up? Or are they really sure? You old thing, you really don't care about what's going on outside your window. The person who came this time is more famous than the previous pair of sisters. She is the only successor of the Desolate Age witchcraft in 9 regions, and she once defeated Little Poison Immortal in poison fighting. I hope she can bring some good news. Another cup of tea time passed. What did Miss Awu say? She said that this poison is not a poison, so ordinary detoxification methods cannot work. And she's just a witch doctor. She doesn't know any more advanced methods. Wait a minute, this poison is not a poison? What does that mean? Supreme Xianxia is also asking, but when Miss Awu is anxious, she can't speak clearly. She often even speaks in local dialect. Alas, finally there's a different idea. I hope it's a good thing. Several elders were discussing in front of the white jade coffins. Suddenly, several middle-aged cultivators came quickly from the outside. Their faces were dignified and even livid as they carried several slightly smaller white jade coffins. Their whole body exuded cold anger. However, at this time, which of the elders present was not knowledgeable? They immediately stopped these people and said, "What are you guys doing?" The middle-aged cultivator who took the lead replied, "We are cultivators from Tiantai Mountain. Our disciples have been poisoned, so we are here to ask for your help." While speaking, a cloud of fire boiled and rolled over. In the middle of the cloud of fire, the red-robed elder looked angry. For Element just made his move again. In Area A3, he killed 2 Yuanying stage cultivators and poisoned 5 successor disciples of Tiantai Mountain. I repelled 4 Element, but I couldn't stop him. I let these people come. As for those 5 disciples, we should save them. Seeing that the red-robed elder had spoken, the elders who guarded the white jade coffins nodded, and let them put the 5 white jade coffins beside Zhu Shiryao and the others. At this time, at a glance, 8 white jade coffins had begun to take shape. How many more would there be next? Chapter 742. Hidden. Has it been determined that he can't be saved? Humph, even if he can be saved, so many people have died in his hands. How can this account be settled? Alas, this time the fallen immortals are really ruthless. Shijirjin has been innocent all his life, but now he can't protect his integrity. If he knew this, I'm afraid he would jump out and kill himself. The speaker shook his head vigorously and said, "The fallen immortals are indeed terrible. I now understand a little bit that when the golden generation of Lingjian school rose with great momentum, it was almost destroyed by a fallen immortal. It's really not because Lingjian school is incompetent." Oh, what happened in Lingjian school that year has been solved. At this time the fallen immortals have already made their move. What else is there to hide? Moreover, who dares to question Lingjian school now? The survivors of the Great Cataclysm had already become the famous elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall. The several successor disciples are also better than the other. People don't have to worry about anything. What do those Dixian people say? What else can they say? A group of dragons without a leader is like a plate of loose sand. Several reasonable people have tacitly agreed to the result of the grand competition, and took the initiative to help. For example, just now, Immortal Luo Shui took the initiative to come forward and try to relieve the toxicity of the poison people. But most people are still watching. If Tetragon doesn't come forward, they don't even have a person who can make a decision. Moreover, I think there are many who want to surrender. Surrender? The fallen immortals haven't even shown up. But they're already scared like this by controlling Shijojin? They even call themselves Dixian people. This kind of backbone is ridiculous. There's no need to laugh at them. They have also fought and faced those terrible monsters. Not everyone can be like the elders of Lingjian school. What's the next arrangement? Let's find Shijojin first. Supreme He too has communicated with the Dixian people. Now, the net is spread in the city of immortals, and we must catch the four element himself. Even if we can't catch the person behind the scenes, we can't let him continue to be so arrogant. Now that several veteran supremes are ready to take action, let's see how long the four Xiangs can last. Although Shijirjin is strong, with the help of so many true monarchs in Dixian, we should be able to deal with him soon. What I'm worried about is what happens next. After dealing with Shijirjin, the mastermind behind the scenes would definitely appear. That time, alas, I thought I would never see the crisis of the fallen immortal in my life. The biggest opponent of our Wanxian League in the next 100 years should be the revived Dixian. I didn't expect the crisis to come so quickly. Speaking of which, where did Wang Lu go? Right now, in the current situation of the City of Immortals, what we need the most is a guy like him with endless ideas. I'm not surprised at all. In the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu suddenly stopped moving forward, shook his head and sighed. In front of him, the light of the City of Immortals in the whirlpool of stars had been faintly visible. They could barely reach it in about an hour. However, as expected, there was already someone blocking the way. A black robe dyed as black as ink. It was Black whom he had been searching for a long time. If everything that happened before was regarded as someone's plan, then this part of the plot was simply logical. Tetragon was lured out of the City of Immortals with the strange poison of the fallen immortals, and Wang Wu was plotted against by Zhu Qi Dragon Ancestor. After that, whether it was Tetragon killing Zhu Qi and smashing the trapped Wang Wu, or Wang Wu breaking out of the restriction and breaking Zhu Qi, the result was the same. Tetragon, Wang Wu, and Wang Lu were lured away, and the City of Immortals was in a mess. Of course, the most important one was Tetragon. She was the one who could really suppress the scene and make the fallen immortals not dare to act rashly. As for Wang Wu, her unpredictable depth was worthy of fear, but in terms of her enthusiasm in doing things, she was not too threatening. Not to mention Wang Lu. He was indeed a genius, but there were so many people in the City of Immortals. Was there no one who could come up with an idea? Was he really that inseparable from Wang Lu? On the other hand, however, Wang Lu would not belittle himself. For the fallen immortals, he must be a thorn in their side. If there was no Wang Lu, there would be no grand competition. Without the grand competition, the Wanxian League and Dixian would lose a stage for peaceful dialogue. Later, Black instigated Dixian to kill people in the grand competition. It was also Wang Lu who stopped the killing with killing, and things did not get completely out of control. These things, if it were someone else, would they be able to do it? Not necessarily. However, since it was Wang Lu who did these things for the fallen immortals, they naturally wanted to get rid of him. What's more, a cultivator who could easily break through from the peak of King Pill to Yuanying stage in just over half a year. It was not too much to be on guard against him. And now it was the best time to nip him in the bud. Tetragon could not come out at all, the city of immortals was in a mess, and there was only Wang Wu who was in King Pill stage. If he didn't kill him now, when would he? The only unexpected thing was that Black would actually show up in person. Although it didn't look like the real person, it was not a clone that could be discarded at will. Its strength was probably at the level of Supreme. But this was also good. Saves the trouble. Wang Lu chuckled and said, "Finish it early and go home to rest." Wang Wu go. He was very self-aware. It was a daydream to fight against a supreme-level opponent in Yuanying stage. The only one who could come in handy was Wang Wu. "Damn it, little Lu, do you think I'm a dog?" Wang Wu scolded Wang Lu for having no conscience, but at the same time, she took the rouge tears and laughed. "Ha, immortal sword." Wang Lu curled his lips and thought, "Look at your greedy face." However, when he thought about it carefully, after inheriting my inheritance, this poor bastard cultivated hard for 150 years. Although she had a peerless cultivation base, she was so poor that she broke her branch to make a sword. When she was down and out, she was even forced to fight empty-handed. That iconic emerald green bamboo sword was simply a disgrace to the Lingjian school. Fortunately, although Wang Wu was poor, Wang Lu was rich. There were not many immortal treasures on him because he didn't need them much. However, the immortal equipment in his mustard seed bag was enough to arm 3 to 5 Wang Wu. However, Wang Wu didn't seem to have much interest at this time. Perhaps the immortal sword Rouge Tears made her want nothing more. Or perhaps she was facing an unprecedentedly strong enemy, so Wang Wu couldn't spare time to blackmail Wang Lu. "It's time to settle the account in the City of Immortals," Wang Wu said with a fierce look on her face. The slender Rouge Tears in her hand suddenly burst out with a heroic red light, which was dazzling. Wang Lu, who was behind her, let out a soft cry of surprise. The sword light of Nanfei's sword art had always been golden, so this red sword light was really rare. The next moment, an even greater surprise followed. Wang Wu let out a deafening roar. The sound wave shook Wang Lu's entire jade mansion, and the colorful light of his Yuanying flickered. And this roar was just a prelude. Rouge Tears was held high above Wang Wu's head, and in an instant it turned into a mountain. Ouch! Suddenly, a girl in an apricot gown appeared next to Wang Lu and cried out in pain and surprise. Wang Lu glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. It was Autumn Beam. "Wang Wu, what kind of trick are you playing? You used an immortal sword to make a move, but you ejected the sword spirit out?" Wang Lu was extremely surprised, but he also faintly understood her intention. Normally speaking, Rouge Tears, which emphasized lightness and speed, could never be used like this. Pushing a 2-finger-wide immortal sword to hundreds of feet has completely violated the basic principles of Rouge Tears. As the core of the soul, the sword spirit obviously can't cooperate. On the other hand, what kind of move do you want to make with such a big scene? Wang Lu could not help but be more confused. Unlike him, Wang Wu still carried the Great Heart Demon Oath. The restriction that she could not take the initiative to hurt people with immortal method was effective for her. If she couldn't take the initiative to hurt people, why did she make a mountain? Did she want to use it as a meteorite and hide in it all the way back to the City of Immortals? The next moment the answer was revealed. In front of him, the corner of Wang Wu's mouth evoked a strange smile. Above her head, the hundreds of meters tall mountain trembled slightly. In his line of sight, the loose white robe revealed most of her lotus arm, like a jade pillar. One end went up, propping up the towering mountain, and the other end went down, gathering on the woman's round shoulder. As the mountain trembled slightly, the arm drew a beautiful arc from top to bottom. The towering mountain moved with it, drawing a terrifying arc from top to bottom. Above the mountain, the invisible sword Qi, which stretched for an unknown length, tore the entire space from top to bottom. In his ears there was a harsh twisting and cracking sound. The shadow that blocked the way disappeared in an instant, as if it had never existed. And the aftermath of the sword chi continued, extending all the way to infinity. The stars in the distance trembled and flickered. From time to time there were small lights that burst and then dimmed forever. The power of one sword strike silenced the sea of stars. Everything began in silence and ended in silence. One sword breaks the stars. In the silence, such a line of words suddenly flashed in Wang Lu's mind. Wang Wu was not the kind of person who would shout out every move, but this sword strike was too amazing. It crushed everything with absolute power and vividly displayed the beauty of power. As a sword cultivator, it was impossible for Wang Lu not to recognize this sword strike. Perhaps it was still quite inferior to Xianmo's great immortal technique that could easily divide yin and yang, but this sword strike was really close to the Tao. The scene in front of him was really a bit beyond imagination. How did this guy cultivate for 150 years? But Wang Wu herself didn't care about it. After the sword strike, the rouge tears returned to its slender appearance. Wang Wu threw it back to Wang Lu and then stretched. Phew. Let's go. Wang Lu took the rouge tears and wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Since there was nothing to say, then he wouldn't say it. However, at this moment, on the rouge tears a cloud of black mist rose from the edge of the sword, along the hilt, and suddenly grabbed Wang Lu's wrist. A friendly advertisement. My beautiful little fox fairy. More than 1 million words. Friends who are interested can read it. Chapter 743. You really don't let people worry at all. In vain I worked hard to eliminate the other party's main force, but in the end you were still plotted against. You're so stupid that I want to sever the master and disciple relationship with you. You slut, your ability to complain first has reached perfection. It's obvious that you as a lackey failed to protect me, which led to my unfortunate poisoning, yet you still have the face to scold me? Damn, if I wasn't there you would have been caught by him long ago. Now your innocence is all thanks to my hard work. Instead of being grateful, you actually dare to accuse me? Innocence? Are you interested in experiencing the taste of your so-called innocence? Good things are for you to enjoy alone, haha. In the whirlpool of stars, the two of them laughed and scolded each other, free and easy. However, from their expressions there was not a bit of relaxation. Wang Wu tightly squeezed Wang Lu's wrist. Her jade-white hand turned red, and crystal-clear beads of sweat oozed from her forehead. As for Wang Lu, the corner of his mouth slightly curved upward, but his facial muscles had stiffened because of excessive force. His palm, which was tightly held by Wang Wu, turned black, and the black gas continued to penetrate along his arm. After a moment of stalemate, Wang Lu sighed and said, "It's indeed the strange poison of the fallen immortals. After using so many methods it still can't be stopped. In any case, it's the trump card of the fallen immortals. If it's so easy to stop, what are they doing?" Wang Wu shook her head disapprovingly and said, "Even I can barely suppress this poison in a corner of my body. If it's you, don't even think about it." Wang Lu laughed and scolded, "Damn, what's wrong with me? We both cultivate the non-phase method, and I've also reached Yuanying stage. What qualifications do you, this king pill, have to be so rampant? What's the use?" Wang Wu immediately smiled contemptuously and said, "We're not cultivating the same version of the non-phase method." After that, she sternly said, "Don't take me as a standard, my path is not easy to walk." Wang Lu nodded. "I can see that the innocent girl from back then has fallen to this state. If you say that this path is easy, I don't believe it either." Wang Wu snorted. "Whose responsibility is this?" It's my responsibility, isn't it?" Wang Lu shook his head and suddenly felt that he was starting to overlap more and more with the big senior brother of the golden generation in his memory, but very soon, he felt waves of dizziness, and the poison had begun to spread uncontrollably. At this moment, even Wang Wu let go of his wrist. After a moment of silence, she said, "Do you need me to give you a quick death?" Wang Lu asked, "How do you want me to be happy?" F***ck. You're still trying to take advantage of me even when you're about to die. Wang Wu cursed. She then said, Look at you, normal methods probably won't work. Why don't we fuse? You know? Wang Lu smiled and said, breaking the star sword is a move that violates the great oath of the heart demon. Perhaps you have endless cards in your hand, but what about the 3-king pill in your body? I'm not blind. After a pause, Wang Lu's face sank slightly. Is Yu still there? Wang Wu was silent for a moment, and then she opened her mouth, but the voice didn't belong to Wang Wu. Thank you for your concern. I'm still here, but this is probably the last time we have a conversation like this. Wang Lu nodded. He was not surprised by this result. He and Yu Jiu of Song didn't have a deep friendship. At this time he couldn't say that he was sentimental or anything. Problem was, did a person who put 3-king pill in her body really have no side effects? Moreover, Yu Jiu of Song and she had been friends for many years. They got along well with each other. It wouldn't be so easy to include him. What side effects are there? It's better than watching you being poisoned to death, right? Wang Lu shook his head and said, not necessarily. Don't look down on me too much. Wang Wu covered her mouth and chuckled. Yes, you're the best. You're immune to poison. This kind of perfunctory attitude was obviously very hurtful. However, before Wang Lu could refute it, a strange and familiar voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Ha ha ha, holy light above, this is not poison. At the same time, in the City of Immortals, in Immortal 1 area, the array where the white jade coffins were placed had been operating at full capacity. From time to time, there was a crackling sound in the air, and purple-blue electric arcs scurried back and forth, which made people afraid to approach. The original design, which could accommodate 20 white jade coffins, was piled up twice as many. The array could still be maintained without breaking, thanks to the deep foundation of the Elder of Kunlun Immortal Mountain. However, even so, there were still dozens of white jade coffins outside the array that had no place to store them. The faces of the cultivators who carried the coffins were livid, and their angry eyes constantly scanned the array. They wished they could throw out a few of the white jade coffins and replace them with their own coffins. The situation in the City of Immortals deteriorated rapidly, and it was even more serious than expected. Shijirjin came and went like a ghost, dealing with Hichu Daoran and dozens of other supremes with ease. Every time he made a move, he could cause heavy casualties. What was more frightening was that the spread of the poison was gradually out of control. The most terrible thing about the strange poison of the fallen immortal was its almost evil infectivity. When one person was poisoned, everyone around him was at risk of being infected. Fortunately, this was the City of Immortals, where there were a large number of golden-armored soldiers and the forbidden method in the city, which could control the situation in the first place. However, everyone knew that if this continued, the collapse would happen sooner or later. Damn it, those old guys from Heavenly Sage Hall usually have their eyes on the top of their heads. When there are benefits, they grab them faster than anyone else. Now that we need them to do things, they're just like idiots. Humph, previously in the grand competition, they asked for resources and manpower from each sect, sucking people's blood until they complained. Now the grand competition has inexplicably disappeared, and there's no explanation for it. Moreover, it's clear that they provoked the fallen immortals, but in the end we bear the loss. This Wanxian League is too much of a scam. Yeah, using the resources provided by each sect to set up a poison sealing array, but in the middle are the people from several big sects. Our people have to wait outside. Damn it, I've never seen such a bully. Their people are people, and our people are dirt. Outside the array, the noise and even insults were endless. The irritability and anger of many cultivators seemed to be real, which made everyone's heart heavy. At this time suddenly, there was a flash of light outside the array, and a tall cultivator came out of it, looking tired. The cultivator wore an unusually large robe, and the hood completely covered his face, which made him look a bit mysterious. However, there were many cultivators present, so some people recognized him. He was the elder of Heavenly Sword Hall of Lingjian School, Ao Guanhai, the #1 pharmacist in the Wanxian League. Right now, most of the hundreds of poison cultivators inside and outside the array relied on his medicine to save their lives and isolate the spread of the poison. However, no matter how proficient Ao Guanhai was in medicine, one person's energy was limited. As more and more poison cultivators got poison, he gradually couldn't take care of them, Now that he had just dealt with the 40 people inside the array, he already felt that his jade mansion was empty. Perhaps he was unable to use medicine for the people outside the array. He somewhat apologetically shrugged to the people outside, and then swallowed a panacea. He wanted to meditate and squeeze his yuaning to restore his true yuan. However, before he sat down, he heard someone not far away say in a strange tone, "The Wanxian League is full of talents, but they let a Kunlun slave mix in here. Those who are not of our race must have a different heart. Who knows if there's anything in his medicine?" These words were no longer words of criticism, but rather they were words of pure malice. For a time everyone's face changed. Although the number of people in Lingjian school was sparse, and it was the weakest among the 5 uniques were, after all, the 5 uniques, and they could not be bullied and humiliated. However, Ao Guanhai himself didn't care. He just quietly sat cross-legged. He had seen this kind of racist remarks too many times, so he was no longer surprised. However, Ao Guanhai didn't mind, but it didn't mean that other people didn't mind. Humph! A cold snort like a broken silver bottle was heard, and then everyone's eyes saw a gorgeous rainbow sweeping across. The next moment, a scream burst out from the crowd. The cultivator with the strange tone just now was stabbed into the air by a sword. A hole was opened in his chest and abdomen, and his blood spilled into the sky. A cultivator with the appearance of a young girl raised her right hand horizontally forward, and 5 colored lines extended from her fingertips, nailing the cultivator who said the strange words in the air, letting the blood from the hole in his chest and abdomen gush out like a waterfall. Then her eyes swept down and said coldly, "At this critical moment, the Wanxian League should be in the same boat. At this time, those who attack our own people with inexplicable reasons are most likely spies of the enemy. If you meet them, kill without mercy." After saying that, the young girl landed on the ground, her posture like a butterfly among flowers, but combined with the corpse in the air, it made people feel indescribably horrified. "Who is that person?" someone asked in a low voice in private. "Who else can it be? Of course, it's someone from Lingjian school. It's said that it's the youngest 9th elder of Heavenly Sword Hall. I think her name is Hua Yun." Wait, don't Heavenly Sword Hall always have 10 people? Why is the youngest 9th elder? Who knows what's going on with the people from Lingjian school? They always do things inexplicably. TSK in public they killed someone just like that. Really overbearing and awe-inspiring. A few of them whispered to each other, but no one dared to speak too much. They were afraid to provoke that beautiful but ruthless god of death again. Being able to shut up a group of grumbling people was, of course, not because of Hua Yun's beauty or ruthlessness, but because the one who was nailed to death in midair was an evil cultivator with deity stage cultivation base. Nowadays, the Wanxian League was very powerful in 9 regions, and it was not easy for evil cultivators to survive. Most of the people who could reach deity stage had a lot of life-saving skills, and their fighting power was often slightly stronger than the cultivators of the same level. As a result, he was nailed to death by a sword. Although he was just a low-level deity stage cultivator, he was still a deity stage cultivator. Sure enough, the rumor that the people from Lingjian school were good at leapfrogging was not groundless. Not to mention that abnormal number 1 king pill in 9 regions, even this unknown little elder also regarded deity stage cultivator as nothing. Realizing this, the people who were full of complaints could only hide their complaints in their bellies forever. If they really fought, Hua Yun alone was enough to give them a headache. Not to mention that Ao Guanhai, who was obviously stronger than her, was beside Hua Yun. Humph, a group of bitches. Hua Yun, who bore a lot of attention, glanced around with disdain, and then sat next to Ao Guanhai. The girl's face quickly put on a smile and very familiarly patted the other's shoulder. "Hey, big guy, what are you doing?" Ao Guanhai somewhat helplessly said, "Junior sister, aren't you too ruthless just now?" Hua Yun immediately pouted her mouth and said, "Humph, that group of bitches, if I don't ruthless, how can they remember? Moreover, the one who died was an evil cultivator. I know him, he likes to play with evil treasures like Motherchildine Banner. He should have died long ago." Junior sister, you're not such a ruthless person. There's no need to force yourself for me. Big guy, you're so long-winded. I helped you but you don't appreciate it. You're so stupid. No wonder you're bullied by fifth senior sister every day. Fifth senior sister, it's me, your savior. I'm tired of hearing it. Hua Yun interrupted with dissatisfaction. How are Yao Er and the others? Not very good. Oh, Guanhai shook his head and said, I've done my best, but this poison is very strange. Wu is right, it doesn't look like a real poison, but the specific composition needs to be analyzed in detail. Speaking of which, Yin Xian took the initiative to use himself as a test subject, which actually helped me a lot. Yin Xian. Hua Yun somewhat frowned and said, What exactly is that kid thinking? Deadface, what the hell are you thinking? In a hidden corner of the City of Immortals, a teenager let out an angry roar. Small advertisement. Chidian has a ship girl novel, Deep Sea Bright Ship. Everyone, don't miss it if you like ship girls. Chapter 744. Shu Si had never been as angry as he was now. As a street ranger, he had long been accustomed to being deceived and used by others. How could a person not be stabbed in the river? It wasn't that Shu Si couldn't afford to lose. In fact, he had long been numb to it. He was a young man with no background, no talent, and no luck. Most of the time, he would take small advantages and then suffer big losses. Sometimes he was robbed by strong gangsters, and sometimes he was exploited by some profiteers, but Shu Si could always make himself laugh. Because if there was no hope, there would be no disappointment. Shu Si would not expect too much. No matter who betrayed or deceived him, it would not hurt his heart. However, at this moment Shu Si was in pain. Deadface, did you do all of this on purpose? Before this resuscitation, Shu Si didn't have time to think too much. At that time he only knew that Deadface might be plotted against by Luo Xiao, and he wanted to help him get out of trouble. But after another deep sleep, he suddenly felt that his mind was a lot lighter, and many problems were strung together. For example, forcing himself to seek cooperation with Luo Xiao. Was he deliberately sending him to his death? For example, how many secrets were hidden in the Jade Bone technique? For example, right now, he could speak directly in his mind. Was this also part of his calculation? In Shu Si's heart, he already had the answer, but he still had to hear the other party's confirmation before he could really believe it. At this moment he couldn't tell what his mood was like. Shu Si even thought, what if Deadface said that everything was just a coincidence? Would he feel relieved? Would she accept everything seriously and change her mind for peace of mind? Unfortunately, Deadface didn't give him room to continue to struggle. Yes, I calculated all of this from the beginning, including letting me die. Of course, I considered the possibility of your death, but according to the calculation, you won't really die. But I have become like this. Shu Si roared in his heart. Deadface, why? Because it's more advantageous. Deadface explained lightly. Now you have gained the initial trust of Luo Xiao, and I have been able to hide my existence. In my expectation, this is the most advantageous situation. The most beneficial? What kind of advantage was this? What do you take me for? Deadface was silent for a moment, then said, I thought you could understand all this. The opponent is the fallen immortal. It's not easy to win this situation. You're now a nail planted by Luo Xiao's side. When the time comes, you'll be able to turn the tables and make the opponent bleed. If I were to face him head-on, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to do it even if I paid 100 times the price. Shu Si shook his head, but the sorrow in his heart deepened. In fact, he didn't fully understand the layout of Deadface, but he didn't have to understand it so well. Now that he had fallen into Luo Xiao's hands, he did not die. He had indeed become a nail hidden by his side. The price of burying a mole around the fallen immortal could be imagined. So, from the very beginning, you've treated me as a chess piece? The Deadface calmly said. Yes, from the beginning. You are the best chess piece in my hand. Shu Si's heart was like dead ashes. A moment later, bitterness surged in his heart, and he couldn't even say half a word. However, Deadface was a bit strange. Do you feel wronged? Strange, why do you feel wronged? Shu Si felt that it was absurd. You have hurt me like this, yet you don't allow me to feel wronged? Before you met me, you were just a precarious mortal in the marketplace. It was I who brought you into the world of immortal cultivation. It was I who taught you to develop Qingfeng Enterprise. It was I who raised you from a penniless pawn to a pivotal business giant. What qualifications do you have to feel wronged? Or do you think it's too much of a loss for you to die young? It's true that you haven't lived in the city of immortals for a long time, and it's only been a few months since you became a business giant. However, in this short period of time, you have experienced the luxury life that ordinary people can't experience, even if they reincarnated 10 times. Your daily consumption is enough for a city ranger to squander for 100 years. The woman you slept with a few days ago is a fairy that ordinary people can't even look up to. In such a life, you should die without regret, let alone you're not dead. When Shu Si heard these words, he felt even colder. Of course, he knew how good Dead Face was to him. Thus, he once vowed in his heart that in the future, even if he had to be a cow or a horse, he would repay his kindness. Even when he was excited, he even thought of breaking his bones to repay his kindness. That's right, a slippery teenager from the marketplace was actually moved by Dead Face to have the idea of dying for his bosom friend. Shu Si had long given his life to Dead Face. However, at this moment, he felt the coldness penetrating into his bones and his heart aching. After a long time he asked Dead Face, "Am I just a chess piece to you? From the beginning to the end you're just using me. Don't you have any other thoughts?" Dead Face lightly said, "What do you want me to think?" Shu Si wanted to say something, but he felt that his chest was stuffy, and he couldn't say anything. He thought that Dead Face would stiffly say no, so that he could let go of the last trace of fluke, but the rhetorical question that was more hurtful than a stiff refusal put him on the verge of collapse. "Yes, that's right. What should I want you to think? I'm just a street swordsman, a prodigal who probably won't live past the age of 20. What can I hope for the famous Xian'inzi to think about me? For me, the fate of a chess piece is already very good." Shu Si's voice trembled more and more. "Dead Face, don't you have any human feelings? You and I have been together for so long in the city of immortals. Even if you're a cat or a dog, you should have some feelings, right? I've always regarded you as mine. How could you?" However, just when Shu Si's feelings were on the verge of collapse, Dead Face suddenly said, "Cats and dogs are not qualified to be my chess pieces. This move is the most important part of my whole plan. If you and I hadn't been together for nearly a year, I would never have believed you." Shu Si found this somewhat funny, but more than that, a strange warmth suddenly surged in his heart. He laughed and said, "According to what you said, being a chess piece is something to be proud of? I'm not good at chess. I only play one game of chess in my life and I only hold one chess piece. So, should I feel lucky to be the only chess piece in your hand? You should indeed feel lucky. For the only chess piece I will do my best." The voice of Dead Face was still so flat, but the resentment in Shu Si's heart had almost disappeared. Yes, Dead Face had always been like this, cold and indifferent. If he expected him to express his feelings like a normal person, wouldn't that be forcing him? Moreover, although Dead Face didn't say it, in fact he was indeed cultivated by him as a successor. Moreover, as a chess piece he was used by him, but Dead Face himself was not much better. In this game of chess he himself was also a chess piece. Understanding this, there was only one knot left in Shu Si's heart. "You told me these things in advance. If I told you in advance, your performance would not be natural. After all, you've only been a chess piece for less than a year, so I can't trust you." Although Dead Face said that he couldn't trust him, Shu Si felt more at ease after hearing it. It wasn't because he didn't value him. On the contrary, it was because he valued him too much that he couldn't trust him. And this feeling was not bad. "So, Dead Face, what's the situation now? Are you really dead or pretending to be dead? What do you want me to do by placing me next to Luo Xiao?" After recovering his state of mind, Shu Si's questions suddenly increased. But before Dead Face could answer, he heard footsteps coming from the outside. Shu Si immediately calmed down and didn't dare to talk to the voice in his mind. At this time, he who had recovered his cleverness naturally wanted to not expose the existence of Dead Face. A moment later, the door opened, and as expected, it was Luo Xiao. "It seems that you and this puppet body are getting along well." Luo Xiao showed a somewhat sarcastic smile. "You just woke up and you already know how to cry. Xu Xi's heart turned cold. He guessed that when he was emotional just now, he probably didn't control his body well. But it was no big deal. After a narrow escape from death, especially when he found out that although he didn't die, his life was worse than death, it was human nature to cry. If Xu Xi wasn't anxious to confront dead face, perhaps he would have cried first before he had time to think about other things. Therefore, he didn't panic and responded to Luo Xiao with the right attitude. What do you want to do? Luo Xiao smiled and said, what do I want to do? There are too many people in the city of immortals who want to know what I'm doing. I'm afraid half of the elders of Heavenly Sage Hall have gone crazy thinking about this question. Why should I tell you? However, after a while, Luo Xiao opened his mouth and said with a smile, but since I'm bored, I can say a few words to you. For example, do you want to know who is behind all this? Xu Xi's heart was shocked, and he did not deliberately hide this shock. Isn't it the fallen immortal behind you? Fallen immortal? Luo Xiao smiled disapprovingly and said, if there are real fallen immortals, how could I be their dog? Any complete fallen immortal can sweep the city of immortals today. Don't worry, it's still early for the real fallen immortal to come. Go. Hearing this, Xu Xi's heart jumped and he could not help but swallow his saliva. However, it's not that easy for the fallen immortals to come to 9 regions completely. Right now at most they just stretched out a hand. That's why they need a helper, or a loyal dog. Luo Xiao smiled and pointed to himself, and then reached out to Xu Xi. Xu Xi, are you interested in being the dog of the fallen immortal with me? Chapter 745. Xu Xi was stunned by Luo Xiao's invitation. He wanted him to be the dog of the fallen immortals? How could Luo Xiao dare to make such an absurd request? Was there something wrong with his brain? He killed Xian Yinzi and made himself look like neither a human nor a ghost, yet he still had the face to ask him to be a dog with him? Xu Xi wished he could untie his belt and pee on his face on the spot. But soon, Xu Xi realized that he shouldn't refuse too decisively. Because from an objective point of view, there seemed to be no reason for him to refuse. He was born in the marketplace, so he naturally lacked any sense of loyalty and belonging. Selfishness was his nature. If the fallen immortals could offer a high enough price, he had no reason not to be tempted. But could the fallen immortals offer a high price? Of course they could. Even a successor of a supreme like Luo Xiao could resolutely defect. The resources in the hands of the fallen immortals were probably beyond the imagination of the cultivators of 9 regions. So wouldn't it be easy to bribe Xu Xi? In addition, according to common sense, Xu Xi should be full of hatred for the Wanxian League. His master, Xian Yinzi, treated him as a chess piece or even an abandoned chess piece and sacrificed him without hesitation. So, according to normal logic at this time, he should hate Xian Yinzi and the Wanxian League that he represented. After realizing this, Xu Xi did not dare to show a contemptuous or negative expression, for fear of being seen through. He tried to adjust his expression to make himself look vigilant and fearful, which was exactly what a teenage chess piece should do. Xu Xi didn't know how good his acting was. In the past, when he was in the marketplace, every time he pretended to be dead, he would be seen through and then beaten up. However, now he was also an immortal cultivator, and his ability to control his body and mind had been greatly enhanced. Maybe he could really hide it? No one knew if Xu Xi's luck was off the charts, but Luo Xiao did not notice Xu Xi's rapidly changing expression. Instead, he said to himself, this is the only opportunity. The fallen immortals don't need too many helpers. In their eyes, it's better for all the cultivators in 9 regions to die. Leaving one more is very eye-catching. Right now their strength is not enough, so they need to recruit a few loyal dogs. But their strength is growing fast, and it won't be long before they no longer need any loyal dogs. As Xu Xi listened, he kept thinking about what he should do next. Deadface was probably afraid of Luo Xiao. When the other party was present, he refused to jump out and speak, so he could only rely on himself. He couldn't be too positive because he had no reason to be positive. At the same time, he couldn't resist too much. For example, he might scold Luo Xiao for being an idiot. He might have the strength of character, but he would probably lose his life. As for thinking of a way to trick the other party, that was even more of a joke. Xu Si was indeed a slippery fellow, but Luo Xiao was no pushover either. He was able to climb all the way from the bottom of the flower-stern sect to Shizhojin's disciple. How could he be fooled? A thought flashed through Xu Si's mind, and he had an idea. He decided to be himself. Why me? As Xu Si said that, his eyes rolled, showing a bit of a slippery temperament. What can I, a nobody in Foundation establishment stage, do for the fallen immortals? Luo Xiao smiled and said, the fallen immortals don't care whether the people who surrender are strong or weak. In their eyes they are all ants. They also don't care if you are smart or loyal enough, because they have plenty of ways to make you unable to play tricks. The reason for finding you is very simple, convenience. Convenience? Luo Xiao said anyway, it's the same for anyone, so why can't I find you? This reason was really strong. Xu Si didn't believe it, but he couldn't find a reason to refute it, so he had to remain silent. Luo Xiao gradually lost interest and said, it seems that you are also a boring person. In that case, seeing that Luo Xiao had raised his hand, Xu Si quickly said, I'm willing, of course I'm willing. Not to mention being a dog for the fallen immortals. I'm willing to be your dog. Very well. Luo Xiao nodded and said, then, help me do one thing. Go ahead. Let's find a way to get rid of Black together. What? Xu Si was shocked. Why do you want to get rid of him? Luo Xiao smiled and said, it's very simple because he is my boss and I don't want to have too many bosses. It's enough for me to be a dog for the fallen immortals. There's no need for another master. When Xu Si heard this, he was even more shocked. It turned out that behind Luo Xiao was Black, the one who was once the leader of Dixian. However, these were not important. The important thing was, what qualification did Luo Xiao Xu Si have to challenge Dixian? Since they are both dogs of the fallen immortals, there will not be too much gap between them. Moreover, Black's action is too fast. The mind disorientation powder of the fallen immortals is about to break out in the city of immortals. We must stop him as soon as possible. The more Xu Si listened, the more confused he became. He could barely understand what mind disorientation powder was. It was probably a kind of strange poison that could break out in the city of immortals. However, for the fallen immortals, it was better to poison all the people in the city of immortals. Why was it necessary to stop him? The cunning rabbit is dead, the hound is cooked. Still not good? Still not good. Outside the poison sealing array in Immortal 1 area, several white-haired cultivators looked at each other and sighed. The strange poison of the fallen immortals was extremely powerful. It had been 3 days since the first case of poison broke out. None of the poison people had been saved. On the contrary, many of the cultivators who tried to detoxify were accidentally poisoned and had to be sealed in the white jade coffin to wait for death. Yes, wait for death. At this point, any rational person would not think that this strange poison of the fallen immortals could really be solved by existing means. There had been too many people who were defeated by this strange poison. The leaders of the 5 super sects, Immortal Luo Shui, who was good at detoxification in Dixian, even when these people gathered and brainstormed, they still could not come up with an effective method. At present, the only thing that could be done was to seal them up to prevent the poison from spreading more wildly. And the people lying in the white jade coffin were no different from corpses in the eyes of others. The cultivators who guarded the poison sealing array were equivalent to the corpse guards. The rotation of the corpse guards was very fast. They changed shifts every 2 hours and there were 2 people in each shift. The main reason was that there were previously corpse guards who were inexplicably poisoned. Thus, the effect of the white jade coffin and the poison sealing array began to be questioned. After many consultations and compromises, the shift system was set up. Although the number of poison people thus expanded, in theory, there should be no risk of poisoning as long as they stayed for 2 hours. However, of course, not everyone was willing to take on this kind of task. Those who were forcibly sent here would be full of complaints. I say, what's the point of guarding these corpses? It's just looking for bad luck for other people. This white jade coffin and poison sealing array are not reliable at all. Fairy Bai Lu of Xiushui Villa is such a good person, but she was inexplicably poisoned next to the white jade coffin. I think it's better to destroy these coffins as soon as possible. Destroy? It's easy to say, but the ones lying in the middle of the poison sealing array are the 3 true disciples of Lingjian's school. If you dare to talk to Fengyin Taoist master about destroying them, be careful that you don't get chopped by his sword. Tisk, so what if it's Lingjian school? Won't the true disciples of Lingjian school die? Can they resurrect by lying in the white jade coffin? Life and death are decreed by fate. Even if Fengyin Taoist master chopped me, his disciple won't be able to resurrect. Be reasonable. Be reasonable? Fengyin Taoist master has a good temper. Maybe he can be reasonable with you. If Wang Lu Zhenren comes back, let's see if he'll be willing to be reasonable with you. Wang Lu. What's wrong with Wang Lu? It's just a mere king pill. Would I be afraid of him? If I can't beat him, I can run away. Moreover, in this situation even Dixian can't help, so what can he do? If he has the ability to detoxify the poison, I will immediately go to the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain and kneel there for 10 years. Brother, I advise you not to talk too much. It's not that I look down on you, but things related to Taoist Master Wang Lu are often unexpected. You think he can't do it, but he will do it for you. Right now, the situation in the City of Immortals is so urgent, but he still hasn't shown up. I'm afraid that when he comes back, he will turn the world upside down. Damn, if he can really turn the world upside down as soon as he comes back, why didn't he come back earlier? I think he probably won't come back. Shizhojin seems to do whatever he wants, but in fact it's very regular. There are 4 true disciples of Lingjian school, and 3 of them are lying behind us. Why do you think Wang Lu can stay out of it? Believe it or not, when you go to the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain and kneel there, don't say I didn't remind you. You mean this is not poison? In the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu unexpectedly asked the voice that suddenly sounded in his mind, but, regardless of whether it's poison or not, why are you here? Because I am always with the holy light. My respected master, I've actually been by your side all these years. You can't have forgotten, right? The voice in his mind was a bit funny and also a bit wronged. Of course, Wang Lu did not forget that if it weren't for Faceless One to glue non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword with the holy light, his king pill would not be so easy to perfect. Nowadays, the world knew that Wang Lu used 2 great methods as the foundation for both offense and defense, but they didn't know that his king pill actually contained 3 kinds of great Tao: non-phase method, primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, and the sea of holy light. It was just that Wang Lu had no interest in the sea of holy light. The existence of the holy light was always a kind of glue, and its sense of existence was not strong. However, after Wang Lu reached Yuanying stage, his colorful Yuanying could perfectly accommodate a variety of great Tao, so the existence of the holy light was somewhat redundant. However, in any case, it was also the strongest great Tao in the Western continent, so there was no harm in leaving it alone. Wang Lu was not surprised that Faceless One, the agent of holy light religion in 9 regions, would always be around him. As he said, he was the real source of the holy light in 9 regions. He was just surprised that Faceless One suddenly appeared. All along, Faceless One had perfectly played the role of a small and transparent person, not interfering with Wang Lu. Even if the latter encountered danger, he would turn a deaf ear to it. It was a bit strange for him to jump out at this time. It's nothing, I just saw something familiar, so I can't help but sigh with emotion. Faceless One said, as if he was deliberately teasing Wang Lu's appetite. However, with the hint of this sentence, Wang Lu could certainly guess the truth. The thing that makes you feel familiar is nothing more than the holy light. And you said that this strange poison is not poison, is it a kind of holy light? A mental drug? When your holy light religion cultivates fanatics, do you use this kind of thing? Faceless One laughed in Wang Lu's mind and said, you're wrong. What we play is a bit more advanced than this. Chapter 746. Alas, I'm getting old and confused. Wang Lu shook his head and secretly scolded himself for losing his former keenness. In fact, he should have thought of it long ago. A highly contagious poison that would make people lose their mind and be controlled by others. Wasn't that a cult? Moreover, in the past, when the Dixian gathered their heroes and developed their power to its peak, they were still powerless against this strange poison. One possibility was that the technical means of the fallen immortals had far exceeded that of 9 regions, so much so that even if the Dixian tried their best, it would still be difficult for them to catch up. However, if there was such a huge technical gap, how did the Sun Booping and the others persist in fighting for so many years without dying out? The second possibility was that the Dixian had mistaken the nature of the poison and really treated it as a poison, which naturally resulted in half the result with twice the effort. Now that he thought about it, the second possibility was most likely the correct answer. The so-called strange poison of the fallen immortals was actually a mental drug, which was a cult. Those who were poisoned were just fooled into believing in a cult. At this time, what was the use of feeding them with elixirs? Of course, the strange poison was equal to a cult. This was just Wang Lu's guess. However, with the evidence of Faceless One, he was confident that this guess would not be wrong. But there is a logical problem here. Wang Wu's voice appeared in Wang Lu's mind in a timely manner. She questioned, the strange poison of the fallen immortals has a history of at least 10,000 years. The Dixians suffered from it more than 16,000 years ago. And the rise of your holy light religion has only been around for a few thousand years, right? Faceless One smiled. It seems that you misunderstood what I mean. I don't mean that this so-called poison is from the Western continent. But there is something in common between the two. Wang Lu explained, any religion or belief that goes to the extreme is no different from a poison. The Western continent has holy light religion, but don't we also have all kinds of religions in 9 regions? Wang Wu smiled and said, for example, wisdom religion? Wang Lu sternly said, wisdom religion is by no means an ordinary religion. It always represents the advanced productivity of 9 regions. Enough with the nonsense. With a few words, Wang Wu interrupted her disciples' eloquent wisdom sect propaganda, and then asked Faceless One, in short, do you have a way to detoxify it? Faceless One said, this is not poison, so it's not a detoxification. Those who fell for it would be like being brainwashed by a cult, involuntarily becoming a loyal believer. This process is irreversible, so it's impossible for them to completely recover. However, there is still room for improvement. Oh. The process can't be reversed, so how can it be reversed? Wang Wu was curious. Wang Wu, you're not smart enough. I've already said it like this and you still don't understand? Wang Lu laughed. Since you're playing with a cult, how can you forget what I did in the past? Wang Wu was stunned for a moment before she understood. When it came to playing with a cult, Wang Lu was indeed an expert. In the past, when the Lingjian school kicked the Immortal Gatherings disciples down the mountain to do experiential learning, Wang Lu's wisdom sect stirred up the entire Blue River region. That matter left a deep impression on her. Because of the wisdom sect matter, she was impeached more than 10 times by Feng He for lax discipline, and her elder's consecrated elder was also deducted for 3 years. Fortunately, at that time, her elder's consecrated elder had already been deducted for more than 10 years, so it didn't matter. In less than a year after Wang Lu went down the mountain, he founded a huge church with hundreds of millions of believers from scratch. The core development model was to accept the ready-made believers of other churches. In simple terms, it was faith conversion. It was very difficult to make those people who were naturally strong-willed and independent to join the church and contribute their faith. However, the ordinary people in the world were ignorant, and they were easily incited. Moreover, they were stubborn. Even with Wang Lu's ability, he couldn't persuade them to be smart. Finally, it led to Wang Lu's determination to develop the wisdom sect. Standing on the basis of other religions, refining more provocative doctrines, building a more reasonable and meticulous management system, coupled with elite talents and the right time, it was only natural for the wisdom sect to soar to the sky. Do you want those poison people to finally believe in your cult? After Wang Wu understood, she wanted to laugh. Wang Lu, this guy was really too bad. Being controlled by the fallen immortals was indeed terrible, but believing in Wang Lu's wisdom sect didn't seem to be any better. It was really like coming out of the dragon pool and then entering the tiger's den. Wang Lu said, I repeat, Wisdom Sect always represents the most advanced production in 9 regions. Are you confident that you can complete the faith conversion? Wang Lu smiled and said, let's not talk about the past record. Don't forget that the current Wisdom Sect has gradually merged with Holy Light Religion. And Holy Light Religion? Faceless One also smiled and said, it's still the same sentence. What we play is more advanced than this. Isn't our goal black? But what are we going to do now? In the City of Immortals, Xu Si followed Luo Xiao in a daze and nervously glanced at the street around him. The two of them were walking on the spacious road of Immortal 2 area. At this time, Immortal 2 area was filled with a murderous atmosphere, completely different from the bustling scene in the past. The alert level was stimulated to the highest level of golden armored warriors everywhere, and the patrols formed by the major sects of the Wanxian League appeared from time to time in every corner of the streets and alleys. However, whether it was the golden armored warriors or the Wanxian League patrols, they all turned a blind eye to Luo Xiao and Xu Si. Sometimes, even when Luo Xiao collided with the opposite person, causing the other party to stagger, the other party acted as if nothing had happened. This was, of course, the means of the fallen immortals, which was far superior to the means of the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions. As Luo Xiao said, once one fell and became the dog of the fallen immortals, the benefits were indeed endless. Luo Xiao just fed Xu Si a purple-black spirit pill, and Xu Si felt that the jade mansion in his body rapidly expanded. A large amount of viscous true yuan filled every corner of his body, and then shrank and condensed into a round and clear king pill. Unsurprisingly, Xu Si had already achieved the king pill. As far as he knew, there had never been such a cheap king pill in the world. The step from Shudan to king pill was not only about the accumulation of magical power, but also involved the refinement of the primordial spirit and the integration with the great Tao of heaven and earth. In short, no one could achieve this step in one fell swoop by pure external force. Therefore, the cultivator who achieved the king pill was called a Taoist master. A person with real ability could be called a Taoist master. However, now, this common sense in 9 regions was broken by his own experience. A pill, a king pill, there was such a beautiful thing in the world. Moreover, this king pill was obviously different from the ordinary king pill. It had all kinds of wonderful things. For example, as long as he recited the formula according to the method taught by Luo Xiao, he would become an invisible person and could walk freely in the Wanxian League. However, if one often walked by the river, how could one not wet his shoes? There were so many capable people in the Wanxian League, and the City of Immortals was their home ground. What if he was discovered? At least it was always a risk to walk outside. What was the reason for Luo Xiao to take the risk? To find someone, Luo Xiao replied. As he said that, he pinched his fingers and calculated something. With Xu Si's eyesight, he could only see that Luo Xiao's method of deduction was exceptionally brilliant, which had far exceeded his original realm of king pill. Most likely, it was also the benefit of the fallen immortal. He just became Luo Xiao's dog, and he was able to obtain the king pill. Then, how much benefit did Luo Xiao himself get? He claimed that after becoming the dog of the fallen immortal, he was not much different from Black Capital. Didn't that mean that he had the magical ability of Dixian? However, if he really had the magical ability of Dixian, why would he have to look for someone so hard? Shizhou Jin? Xu Si was surprised again. Because after walking on the streets of Immortal 2 area for a while, and listening to the conversations of the people around him, he already knew what role Shizhou Jin played in the City of Immortals. He was the lackey of the fallen immortal that countless people wanted to kill. Why did Luo Xiao want to find him? I'm going to kill him. Kill him. Xu Si was even more puzzled. Isn't he on our side? Why are you looking for trouble with him? Luo Xiao sneered and said, our side? What a ridiculous idea. I won't be on the same side as anyone but myself. The others are only strangers and enemies. And killing Shizhou Jin is more beneficial to me. If his matter can't be completed, Black Capital has no choice but to do it himself, which is bound to reveal flaws. But, is what Shizhou Jin is doing inconsistent with our interests? With him, I don't think the Wanxian League will last long. Luo Zhao's smile became colder. But what good is it for me if the Wanxian League collapses now? The credit is completely taken up by him, so what will I be in the future? Have you forgotten what I told you before? Of course Xu Si did not forget. When the cunning rabbit dies, the hound is cooked. This was the reason why he secretly planned to kill Black Capital. Now, it was still the same reason why he wanted to kill Shi Jing. This Luo Xiao was indeed an expert in betrayal. Now that he had betrayed the fallen immortal camp, he only considered his own interests and abandoned the cause of the fallen immortals. His behavior could be said to be equivalent to betrayal. He did not know if the fallen immortals behind the scenes would directly destroy him after they knew about it. As long as I don't touch the root and can show no less value than Shi Jing, the fallen immortals will not kill me. The fallen immortals don't care about the bite between loyal dogs. Luo Xiao said, and his middle finger suddenly trembled. I found it. The next moment he took Xu Si's hand. Xu Si felt his vision blurred and the scene quickly distorted. When it was restored, he was already in the Immortal 5 area. Not far away was the residence of the famous chief planner of the organizing committee in the City of Immortals. However, there was no news from the owner, so it seemed deserted. Then, the target of Luo Zhao's trip stood in front of the courtyard. Master, long time no see. Luo Xiao approached with a strange smile. After Shi Jing turned his head, he frowned and said, "What are you doing here?" While speaking, Shi Jing had raised his arm, and a dark vortex slowly condensed in his palm. This was the rhythm of the war. Luo Zhao's contribution to Shi Jing's transformation from the mainstay of the Wanxian League to the lackey of the fallen immortals was indispensable. And now, although the two sides had the same position, Shi Jing of course would not trust Luo Xiao because of this. He had been plotted against once, and he could not be plotted against a second time. And in a head-on fight, his foundation was much stronger than that of Luo Xiao, so he would not lose. However, Luo Xiao certainly knew this, so this time he brought a helper. Xu Si, go. The next moment, Xu Si's mind buzzed, and he could not help but pounce on Shi Jing. Chapter 747. Master, thank you for letting me win. In the City of Immortals, the battle between the master and disciple ended calmly. It was as if in a flash the outcome of the battle was clear. Luo Zhao's arm penetrated Shi Jing's chest and dug out his beating heart. Shi Jing's face was devoid of joy and sorrow, but black blood continued to gush out of his mouth. There was a hint of ridicule in his eyes. The next moment, Shi Jing fell silently. Luo Xiao chuckled, leaned down and closed Shi Jing's round eyes. Master, rest in peace. Xu Si, who witnessed the whole process, was dumbfounded, and his heart was filled with shock. His mind couldn't work at all. As the person involved, Xu Si saw the whole process of the battle clearly. Luo Xiao threw him out like a hidden weapon, and then moved his feet and arrived in front of Shi Jing first. His blood-red right hand went straight to the Supreme's heart. Luo Xiao was the first to defect to the enemy, so he got the most benefits. When his right arm stretched out, it was as if the sea of blood from the 9th level of hell was also brought out. Countless wandering souls and malicious spirits flew and roared around his arm, and the power was astonishing. However, Shi Jing was fearless. With a wave of his hand, he released a black vortex and absorbed all the surging sea of blood. The remaining power expanded and instantly scattered the blood on Luo Zhao's arm, and suppressed him to the point that he couldn't move. However, the next moment, Shi Jing's eyes turned and looked at Xu Si, who was still flying in the air, and the vortex in his hand could not help but stagnate. This stagnation completely reversed the outcome of the battle. Luo Xiao mercilessly seized the gap and broke away from the suppression of the vortex. The blood on his arm rose again, and he directly dug out Shi Jing's heart. Thus, the battle ended in a hurry. In Xu Si's view, this result was completely unacceptable because it was illogical, unreasonable, and completely inexplicable. Shi Jing clearly had an overwhelming advantage, so why did he make a suicidal mistake at the last moment? He was distracted by Xu Si, but why? What was there to care about? A quick king pill, even if it was used as a hidden weapon, could not hurt him at all. but it will alarm everyone around and lead to the pursuit of the patrol. Luo Xiao is forcibly detonating the Purple King pill in your body. Once it erupts, the entire city of immortals will be shocked. It is not easy for a supreme to reverse the self-exploding process of the Purple King pill with an external force, so Shi Jurjin will hesitate for a moment. In Xu Xi's mind, Xianninzi's voice quietly sounded. Xu Xi was taken aback. Deadface, why did you come out? Of excess Luo Xiao is. I am less of it. Xianninzi sneered. Because it seems that there is no need to hide. Pill of Chan of as of excess, Luo King of Luo Si, Xiao also of excess of Jin of Master of Chan. Xu Xi asked curiously, what did I hear? Xianninzi said. I heard the key line that he relied on to win. If I remember correctly, Luo Xiao, you just said something to Shi Jurjin at the moment when he revealed a brief flaw, which made him subconsciously give up his resistance, so that he could be killed in one fell swoop, right? Luo Xiao snorted. Sure enough, he heard it. I said to him, Master, leave the rest to me. You can go in peace. So he really went in peace and forcibly lengthened the flaw, so that I had the chance to kill him. Xu Xi was baffled by his words. Leave the rest to me, you can go in peace. Just because Luo Xiao said so, Shi Jurjin really went in peace? Wasn't that too unreasonable? There is nothing unreasonable, because that sentence can make Shi Jurjin realize which side the person in front of him is on. Then, in addition, Shi Jurjin's poisoning may not be thorough, so he is willing to stretch out his neck to be killed, that's all. Xu Xi was stunned for a moment. He didn't understand, but soon he opened his mouth wide and looked at Luo Xiao incredulously. Deadface, you mean? Could it be that this guy is? Before he finished speaking, he saw Luo Xiao's face change. Shut up, the main character is coming back soon. Xianninzi, wait a moment. No need to talk nonsense, I haven't fallen to the point where I need you to command me. As soon as the two people's voices fell, suddenly, a terrifying breath that made people's breathing freeze descended from the sky. Xu Xi involuntarily knelt on the ground, his body trembled, and the black thick liquid in his body kept tumbling as if it was boiling. Xianninzi also temporarily hid in the deepest part of his body. Beside him, Luo Xiao gritted his teeth and stood in place, but there was a constant sound of bones compressing and colliding in his body. Then Xu Xi heard a voice that was not too strange to him. Most people who had lived in the City of Immortals for a long time and watched many matches would not be unfamiliar with this voice. It was the indifferent voice of Dixian in the dark. Why do you want to kill 4 elements? The tone of the voice was flat, and it was impossible to hear the joy or anger of the owner of the voice. However, as the voice fell, the pressure on Xu Xi and Luo Xiao obviously increased. Xu Xi was shocked, and his mind was like a lonely boat in a storm. At this time he remembered what Luo Xiao just said. As long as one became the dog of the fallen immortal, there would not be too much difference between them. What a joke! Kill 4 elements. After a long time, Luo Xiao gathered enough strength and answered. It's because as a chess piece, he has a fatal flaw. If he is not eliminated as soon as possible, it will have an irreparable major impact on the plan. The black-clad Dixian was silent for a moment, and then said, You're lying. However, Luo Xiao ignored him and continued to explain. When I was transforming the 4 symbols, either my technique wasn't proficient enough and I made a mistake, or as a perfected lord, he had some kind of unique arrangement that made the transformation ceremony imperfect. In short, he was not completely transformed, and still retained a trace of self-consciousness. Therefore, when he carried out the order, it was difficult for him to be perfect, and he would always leave flaws. He clearly had the ability to kill in the City of Immortals, but he was satisfied with guerrilla warfare. Because deep in his heart, he still regarded himself as a humble 9 regions person and refused to kill his own kind. I think this is a crack in the wall which may expand at any time, leading to the collapse of the whole wall. If one day he loses control and exposes our secret, I'm afraid I can't afford the loss. The black-clad Dixian was silent for a moment. You're still lying. Luo Xiao said, in addition, I have another reason to kill 4 elements. I can do what he did, so there's no need to share the credit with others. Masters don't need to keep too many dogs. Black began to be silent again. After a long time he raised his hand. Master, there's no need for self-determined, not well-behaved dogs. As soon as his voice fell, Luo Xiao let out a shrill ghost-like scream. Luo Xiao, who stood firm under the heavy pressure, curled up on the ground in pain. Every piece of skin on his body was melting, and what flowed out from under the skin was black blood. Fortunately, the melting only lasted for a moment before it was taken back by Black. I'll give you one last chance. Finish the work left by 4 elements and don't waste my time. Luo Xiao gasped violently on the ground. His body trembled involuntarily. However, he still struggled to respond. I understand. Although his voice was in pain, Xu Si, who was also kneeling on the ground, saw the joy in Luo Xiao's eyes. After an unknown amount of time, Xu Si felt that the pressure on his head gradually dissipated, and then he dared to raise his head. As expected, Black was nowhere to be found. Beside him, Luo Xiao took a long breath. His body was still in a half-melted state, which was too horrible to look at, but Luo Xiao seemed to have won. We've already won half of the battle, Luo Xiao explained. His voice was blurred because of the melting of his vocal cords. Black has come back, which proves that he really can't let go of the things here. Next, as long as I force him back at the right time, my task will be completed. Xian Yinzi appeared at the right time and responded, What is Black doing now? I don't know. I only know that he's not in the City of Immortals, and he's very important. It seems to involve the fundamental secret of the City of Immortals, and it's related to Tetragon and the others. In that case, as long as I keep disrupting his steps and force him to waste his time in the City of Immortals, I will be able to interfere with him. At that time, he will either be killed by Tetragon in his hurry, or he will come back here and be killed by me, who has been lying in ambush for a long time. Of course, it doesn't matter if he insists on not coming back. All the killing moves he has set in the City of Immortals will be nullified. Hearing this, even Xu Si could be sure that this guy seemed to. Don't get me wrong. I'm not interested in being your companion. I'm the dog of the fallen immortals, that's for sure. Shijirjin may not have been transformed perfectly, but I have been transformed perfectly, so my position will never waver. Xu Si frowned. Since he was the dog of the fallen immortals, why did he do something that clearly hindered the interests of the fallen immortals? I have no intention of hindering the interests of my master, but, Luo Xiao said and showed a horrible but brilliant smile. Dog biting dog is a matter of course. At the same time, in the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu suddenly stopped moving forward. Behind him, in a place infinitely far away, it seemed that something important had happened. Although it was only a hazy premonition, Wang Lu could not turn a deaf ear to it. However, as soon as Wang Lu stopped, the people behind him who couldn't stop immediately suffered. *T. Wang Lu, did you do that on purpose? It's fine if you stop suddenly, but you also tightened your body and almost turned me into a flat person. Wang Wu covered her nose while denouncing Wang Lu. I'll let you see the power of the two-way foil. Wang Lu shook his head and told his feelings truthfully. Sure enough, he was ridiculed. If you need to pee, you can just say it. As a result, before his voice fell, he saw the whirlpool of stars in front of him shattered, and 2 figures flew out in a hurry. Wang Lu, please save Tetragon. Wang Lu's eyes narrowed. Xianmo Baize? Spirit Sword Mountain Animation PV has been released, and is currently waiting for readers to vote enthusiastically in the Tencent Animation PV competition. If you want to see a long animation, then vote hard. Thank you for your support. Chapter 748. Xianmo Baize? What are you doing here? Wang Lu was surprised by the sudden appearance of the 2 Dixian. At the same time, he secretly put rouge tears behind him and gestured to Wang Wu, signaling her to use the star-breaking sword again to gain the upper hand. Xianmo and Baize were unaware of Wang Lu's malice. They urged eagerly, Tetragon is trapped in the thunder pool. Please find someone to save her. The next moment, Wang Wu's star-breaking sword reappeared, as if to crush Baize and Xianmo into powder. However, as soon as the sword was launched, A golden seal came toward them like lightning and hit the tip of Rouge Tier's sword. The golden seal dimmed in an instant, and Bai Zhe spat out a mouthful of black blood on the spot, falling into Xian Mo's arms. The thin sword in Wang Wu's hand also let out a whine, reluctantly withdrawing the gushing sword energy, and also became dim. Wang Wu herself snorted, and her face turned red and white. Both sides made the same choice. Wang Lu frowned and glanced coldly at Xian Mo and Bai Zhe. The two seemed to have experienced a fierce battle. They were bruised and extremely weak. After the sword attack just now, Bai Zhe was completely useless. Only Xian Mo still retained a certain amount of combat power, so the next opponent would be her. The last time they parted, she hoped that they could fight side by side when they met again, but now it seemed that it was an extravagant hope. Xian Mo, I didn't expect that even you with thick eyebrows and big eyes would betray the revolution. Wang Lu sneered and pulled out a cold long sword from his waist. The sword body was crystal clear, and the hilt was written with the word Mysterious Frost in ancient characters. On the immortal path, Wang Lu broke through all the illusions with the Mysterious Frost sword. The sword momentum was fierce and unstoppable, but it was purely a trick. Now he had the cultivation of nascent soul, and a spiritual treasure-level immortal sword was just right. However, as Wang Lu stroked the sword, the Mysterious Frost sword was covered with a layer of blood, and its power expanded thousands of times, showing an unnatural distortion. This was one of the killing moves that Wang Lu had prepared for himself. He used the cultivation of nascent soul to trigger the self-destruction of the sword, and before the sword completely collapsed, he could launch a sword energy beyond the limit. According to Wang Lu's calculation, combined with the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, the attack ability could barely touch the bottom line of supreme level. For a Dixian in perfect condition, such an attack was nothing to worry about, but for a seriously injured person it was quite threatening. Of course, it was really whimsical to think that a sharp weapon could cross the natural moat between Yuanying and Dixian. Therefore, Wang Lu had prepared hundreds, even thousands of sharp weapons. Behind the Mysterious Frost sword, there were thousands of spiritual treasure-level weapons hidden in the mustard seed bag. That was the divine weapon arsenal collected by the Wanxian League for the grand competition, and Wang Lu got the key to it by virtue of his position. When necessary, he could open this divine weapon arsenal and set off a storm in an extravagant way. At that time, even if he faced Dixian, he could barely fight. "Stop! We are not your enemy," Xian Mo said loudly. She looked tired and hurt, and her cloudy eyes reflected the cold light of the Mysterious Frost sword, which made her look desperate and helpless. "Wang Lu, wake up!" Wang Lu turned a deaf ear to her, and the Mysterious Frost sword in his hand seemed to have ignited a raging fire. However, at this time there was a hand on his shoulder. "Wang Lu, stop for a moment, the situation is a bit wrong." Wang Lu looked back at Wang Wu, waiting for her explanation. "That negation seal just now is not lethal. It's more like breaking the illusion," Wang Wu said. "They just don't trust that we are not real people." "Oh." Wang Lu raised his eyebrows, his mind turned quickly, and then he reached out and gently brushed the sword from the lower right side up, taking away the fire from the sword with his fingertips. It became crystal clear and cold once more. "What's going on?" Xian Mo finally breathed a sigh of relief. Her body softened and she sat down on the ground. However, in the face of Wang Lu's outstretched hand, she shook her head. "Don't worry about us. Go and save Tetragon. Black has officially made his move. He set up an ambush for Tetragon in Thunder Reservoir. Many of us rushed to rescue him, but we can't compete with him in Thunder Reservoir." "Thunder Reservoir?" Xian Mo reached out her hand and gently touched the void, which then released a broken starlight. "Thunder Reservoir is at the bottom of the group of immortal tombs. Follow this light, it can take you around the cleansing stars sea." Wang Lu didn't rush to take the starlight. "Tell me more." Xian Mo took a long breath and tried to calm down her fragmented mood. "Black. Designed to lure Tetragon to Thunder Reservoir alone, which is the most secret place in the group of immortal tombs. Tetragon didn't expect to be ambushed in Thunder Reservoir, so he was caught off guard and seriously injured. And then," Wang Lu said, "and then she asked you for help?" "No, she didn't ask anyone for help. It's Black. Black took the initiative to disclose the location of Thunder Reservoir, luring us to rescue him, and then broke us one by one. Because Liu Biechen stole the secret of heaven in advance, he vaguely calculated that this trip would be unfavorable, so that we could prepare and escape. But I'm afraid we can't reach the city of immortals anymore, Xian Mo said and looked up bitterly, letting Wang Lu see a trace of blackness in her throat. Poison. Both Bai Zhe and I have been poisoned by him. But rest assured, I can barely seal the poison in my body so it won't infect you. Before Xian Mo could finish her words, Wang Lu had already firmly grasped her hand. You? Don't touch me. Xian Mo wanted to shake off Wang Lu, but at this time she was so weak that she couldn't even do such a small thing. Her slender wrist was still tightly held. However, the next moment, Xian Mo's eyes widened in disbelief, and a look of surprise appeared in her gray pupils. This was because the boundless darkness within her body was disappearing at an astonishing speed, like melting snow. Instead, it was replaced by a sacred and warm light. Xian Mo seemed to be soaked in warm water, and the coldness in her body disappeared. This is... Wang Lu smiled and said, "Welcome to the big family of holy light." Although Xian Mo didn't understand holy light and couldn't think of the principle of holy light detoxification, she knew that she had finally gotten rid of the nightmare that had plagued Dixian for countless years. Wang Lu, thank you, you're really... Xian Mo trembled and opened her mouth. After her cherry lips slightly opened, she was at a loss for words. She had so many things to say, but she couldn't say them. However, soon Xian Mo calmed down her agitated mind and said, "Thank you for saving me, but now Tetragon's matter is more important. She is the most indispensable member of all of us, please." Wang Lu smiled bitterly and said, "The poison in your body has now broken out in the city of immortals, and it seems that I am the only one who can detoxify it." Xian Mo was stunned. Wang Lu's words revealed a basic contradiction. Tetragon and Thunderbolt Reservoir needed the internet, but the city of immortals needed it more. Tetragon was an important member of Dixian, but for Wang Lu, he could only be regarded as a very happy friend. However, the city of immortals was Wang Lu's everything. Wang Lu had the elixir to detoxify the poison. After returning to the city of immortals, the detoxification matter could be in the bag. However, in Thunderbolt Reservoir, Black had the advantage of time and place. Even the Dixian had successively lost their halberds, so how could Wang Lu, a Yuanying stage cultivator, play a role? One question after another emerged in Xian Mo's mind, which made her heart sink. "Why do you want to find Wang Lu?" Wang Wu asked rationally. "Wang Lu is not the best candidate in any case. Even if you want to find me, it's better than finding him, right?" Going to Thunderbolt Reservoir to rescue Tetragon was indeed the #1 king pill in 9 regions, far more suitable than Wang Lu, a new Yuanying stage cultivator. "It's what Tetragon said," Xian Mo replied. "From the beginning to the end, she didn't ask us for help, but she asked us to find Wang Lu." Wang Lu shook his head and scolded with a smile, "This guy. It's not enough for her to die alone. Does she have to drag me down with her? Never." Xian Mo's voice rose a bit. "Tetragon would not do such a childish thing. She must have an important reason. Wang Lu, even if you don't trust us, you can at least trust Tetragon." Wang Lu asked, "If I don't trust you, who knows if Tetragon is really trapped in Thunderbolt Reservoir? Or even if Thunderbolt Reservoir really exists? Perhaps you're a spy sent by Black. Then everything before has no value to discuss." Xian Mo was tongue-tied. At this moment, if Wang Lu insisted on suspecting her, she really had no way to prove her innocence. "I don't doubt you," Wang Lu said, "but about rescuing Tetragon." At this time, Wang Wu suddenly said, "Go." "Huh? What's the reason?" Wang Wu thought for a moment and said, "There are 2 reasons. The first is based on a simple logic. If the enemy wants us to do it, we should not do it. Just now, on our way back to the city of immortals, didn't we encounter Black's avatar? Now I think, isn't that sword a bit too easy to deal with? Even a waste like Bai Zhe could block my sword with his immortal treasure when he was seriously injured. Well, the price is that he seems to be dying. But Black's avatar is not even as good as the seriously injured Bai Zhe?" Wang Lu pondered and said, Do you want to say that Black's interception is actually a trick to make us think that he doesn't want us to go back to the City of Immortals? In fact, if we don't go to the City of Immortals, but to Thunder Reservoir, he would be in big trouble. Of course, this is just my guess. Wang Wu seriously said. And the second reason is that the problem of the City of Immortals is not necessarily related to you. If I don't go, who else can solve the strange poison of the fallen immortals? Wang Wu pointed to herself and said, Me? Faceless has already explained the principle of the trick of the fallen immortals. The struggle for power and profit on the level of belief is not an original creation. I happen to know a friend who is good at this. She should be coming to the City of Immortals soon after my call. A friend similar to you? Oh, and if you don't trust me alone, you can add another insurance, such as giving me the title of Holy Woman of Holy Light Religion, so that I have the management authority of Holy Light. In short, the problem of the City of Immortals is not necessarily related to you, but on the other side of Thunder Reservoir. Tetragon's target is you, not anyone else. Wang Lu didn't waste too much time to think about this problem. Very well, then as you said, you go to the City of Immortals. I will go to Thunder Reservoir and then these two people here. Xian Mo said. I will go to the City of Immortals to call people. There are still too many companions there who are kept in the dark. If they can be mobilized, they will soon be able to solve the dilemma of Thunder Reservoir. Bai Zhe, who was previously seriously injured, struggled to stand up and said, I will go to Thunder Reservoir. I have made a mistake, so I will clean it up myself. Outside the City of Immortals, a female cultivator arrived on a crane. At the city gate, a row of golden-armored soldiers blocked her way. Who are you? Seeing this, the female cultivator smiled sweetly and said, Li Yunhe of the Eastern Border region, entrusted by Taoist Master Nanfei's, came to solve the problem of the City of Immortals. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.